Chapter 11. Lois. Elaine, I'm in a bit of a pickle and I need to talk to you. Think you'd be up for a Skype tonight? Come on, I need you. I turned around and ran back into the house, the image of Norman's back to me as he talked into his cell phone to some other woman frozen in my mind. He said he was in a pickle, and yet he couldn't talk to me. He had to seek out this Elaine person? Who was she, and what made her so special? I thought we were having a nice, cozy evening with Rose, and I had come out to suggest to Norman that we ask her if she wanted to play a few hands of cards and watch a movie, and instead he was getting all fidgety to get home to Skype with Elaine, whom he needed. I knew I was being petty, but when David was getting involved emotionally deeper and deeper with Philippe, this was one of the hallmarks of deception. Secret phone calls or dodging me when his cell phone would ping. Skype meetings he swore were for work, but were done in French, so if I did overhear, I had no idea what was being said. And the pulling away from me. We were supposed to be each other's best friend, our everything, and it felt like he'd replaced me with Philippe once I found out. Did Norman have a girlfriend and he didn't want to tell me? To keep from hurting me? When I made it inside, I grabbed another glass of cider and poured in a healthy dollop of the booze Rose had offered up earlier. I downed my cup in about 3 swallows and tried to keep my breathing even. The last thing I needed was an anxiety attack. I used to get them over David when he was drifting away from me, and I was 9 months pregnant with his child. I think that's why I never dated again. My trust had been shattered by David, and I never really put it back together, despite the 2 years of therapy I attended. Men were like a minefield of emotional betrayal, and I did not need to go for a stroll through it. Well, Norman was free to hit the road anytime he wanted, and Rose and I could play cards and watch a sappy rom-com on our own, perfectly fine. We couldn't decorate the tree tonight because we had to give it a day or so for the boughs to relax and drop a bit. I did feel a smattering of guilt when I saw Norman carrying the banana cake in one-handed, and I swung the door open for him, plastering on a fake smile. Then I remembered Max's words about how he was far more capable than people might assume, and hated being pitied or given pity help. Well, he had opened enough doors for me, and turnabout was fair play. He gave me an odd look as he advanced into the kitchen and glanced back over his shoulder, only to catch me ruminating on the Elaine situation. When he put the banana cake down, he turned to me and said, "Spill it." "Excuse me?" I said, taken a bit aback by him being so upfront. "Something has ticked you off," he said. "I thought we were having a good time. What's wrong?" Norman had said yesterday that there wasn't anyone special in his life, and he had no reason to lie. But then, I always thought David had no reason to lie to me, and he was chatting with Philippe at every available opportunity. Was I already losing Norman for the 2nd time because of this Elaine? "You were on the phone, and I went out to help you with the cake. I overheard you. When I asked you if there was anyone special in your life, you said no," I said, trying not to sound hurt. "And I meant it, Lois. Do you think I would lie to you when I'm trying to reestablish a connection between us? Or is this possibly a jealousy thing? Because there is absolutely nothing to be jealous over." "It is so not a jealousy thing," I retorted as Rose entered the kitchen. Silence descended like a black cloud over the room, and Norman shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, ladies, I'm going to leave you to enjoy this lovely cake in peace. I've taken up enough of your time for one evening, I think. Lois, it was fun spending time with you tonight. I hope we can do it again sometime if you care to see me again." Well, of course she would, Rose interjected, pushing her nose in. Why wouldn't she? Norman, thank you for bringing home the tree. It means so much to me. The last real tree in this house was put in by my late husband, you know. I do hope you will come by tomorrow evening after work so we can decorate it as a group. Ask my Maxie and her Jonathan if they want to pop by, too. The more the merrier, right, Lois? I couldn't help but notice that the "right, Lois" was said in a pointed tone, and I nodded mechanically. Norman promised he would pass on the invite and that he would be back for the decoration party. And with that, he left, leaving me feeling like a rotten, jealous, ugly person. I needed some time to read and think. Stat. I sat in the parlor in my pajamas and robe, staring at the enormous tree and remembering that it had been all Norman's idea to do us this kindness. I sniffled, and Rose popped in with her tea tray, plunked it on the coffee table, and prepared a cup, which she then deposited in my hands, doing a switcheroo with the wine glass I had been holding on to like a lifeline. She sat down on the other end of the couch and turned to me and said, I thought you could use a friend. If that's not me, you should at least call Maxine. Something went wrong between you and that boy tonight, and it's weighing on you. I can tell. I nodded and took a sip of the chai. What went wrong is what always goes wrong with me and good men. I keep messing up, and I don't know how to stop. I overheard him on his cell talking to some girl named Elaine, saying that he needed her, and I got uncomfortable, jealous even. Oh, honey, Rose said, reaching out and patting my knee. Would it help you to know that you aren't the first jealous woman in history? Would it help you to know who this Elaine is? As awful as that is, Rose, yes, it would help. I mean, we were having such a nice time, and I blew it over who? Jonathan's little sister who lives in Chicago, dear. She's no threat to you. Norman thinks of her as a little sister, too. And with that, I swallowed my tears and wanted to reach for my cell phone to send Norman an apology, when I realized I didn't have his number. Here we were, 10 years later, and I still didn't know that man's digits. Rose, this is lovely, but do you mind if I bail on a girls' night and take this tea up to my room? I think I owe someone an apology, and I need to first call Max to get his number. That perked the older woman right up. Oh, no need for that. I've got his number on the fridge. It's under the Darth Vader magnet because until recently I had a bad impression of Norman. All those death drop pranks on my poor Maxie. But he did bring her and Jonathan together, so it's all been for the best. And the way he put Maxie up in Florida and helped with Jonathan, well, he deserves a light side magnet. Do rearrange them while you're getting his number, dear. I found the slip of paper with a phone number on it smack under Vader's head, where Rose said it would be, and pulled my cell from the pocket of my robe to enter it in. Then I swapped the Vader and BB-8 magnets and headed up the steep stairs to my room, a tad nervous, but determined. I had to make this right. I couldn't lose Norman again through a simple act of foolish jealousy, especially when it felt so damn right having him back in my life.
Chapter 12. Norman. It was like she wasn't even herself, Eli. I moaned in front of my laptop, where Elaine's calm and practical face was staring back at me. I'm sure, Elaine said flatly. Look, Norman, the truth is she was jealous, plain and simple. And when called on it, she did what most insecure people would do and tossed it back in your face so that the heat would be off her and her feelings. She's going to call you any moment and apologize. I snorted. I wouldn't count on it. She'll never want to see me again. What with this on top of how I treated her when we were kids. Norman, don't be a goof. Elaine started to unbraid her hair and rebraid it in a different style. She's obviously willing to move past the past, if you follow. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been 2 dates already. Because, yes, the nut house and the Christmas tree lot were most definitely dates. Which means your unlucky streak is broken. It only all started to go to shit after the second date, not the first. Thanks, Eli. I see why I come to you for solid advice, I sarcastically intoned. Look, she needs a bit of time, okay? She needs the time to build trust between you two again. And as good of a sign as that second date was, it ended in the crapper because that trust wasn't there yet. But it will be. If you keep being your annoying, persistent self and don't give up on her because of one freakout. Be understanding, be kind. Don't be a dope. I get the picture. Okay, so be freaking magnanimous as hell when she calls to apologize because you say she will. Which, by the way, I think you are dead wrong about. Just then, the strains of Eye of the Tiger began to play from my pants pocket, and my eyes almost bugged out of my head. Holy mother of dragons, Eli, I think it's her. What should I do? Calm the fuck down and be kind to her. Listen to her. Give her time to rebuild that trust. Now go. Elaine made a shooing motion at the camera and logged off, and I grabbed my phone and answered it on the third ring. Hello? I said, and cringed. I mean, hello? Yeah, I got your number all right, an amused female voice said. Lois? Norman. Lois. Norman. Rocky, we both said at the same time, ending our awkward introduction on a shared joke from our past. We had streamed and watched together the Rocky Horror Picture Show many times, it being one of our movies. So, Norman. Yes, Lois? I encouraged. I'm calling to apologize for making a fool of myself and for making you feel like you had to leave. You didn't. I was having a freak out because I was jealous, okay? I'm sorry, but I was. I didn't know who this Elaine person was that you were calling on our date, and I kept getting flashbacks to my time with David when Philippe moved in on my man and my inner wrath beast was unleashed. Can you forgive me? I don't want things to be awkward when we decorate the tree. They won't be, I reassured her, thrilled she had referred to tonight as our date. There's nothing to forgive, Lois. We're good. We're always good, as far as I'm concerned, okay? Okay, she said, her voice sounding less small, more confident. Mission accomplished. So, what are you wearing? She practically purred into the phone before giggling like a crazed hyena. Lois always had this bizarre laugh when she got going. I secretly loved it. Oh, work boots, jeans, tight white t-shirt. I look like I climbed out of a photo shoot for GQ, per usual. I settled back onto the pillows behind me, my laptop having been open on my bed. I was, in fact, wearing pajama pants and nothing else, but I wasn't telling her that. Or wait, what had Elaine said earlier? Show her your vulnerability. Let her see that you've changed by being absolutely honest. Okay, fine. You tore it out of me. I'm wearing red pajama pants with Christmas trees on them. They're hideous, but they were also given to me by my mother, who had no taste at all. But I love them to bits because they remind me of her. They are getting a bit threadbare, actually. Oh, Norman, I'm sorry. How long ago did she pass? We've never talked about her since reconnecting. That's because I don't talk about her, I said, wetting my lips and biting them. It was 4 years ago. Aneurysm. She went to sleep and didn't wake up. I found her in the trailer when I was on my way to work. She was always up before me to make me breakfast. No matter how often I said I didn't need to be babied, that woman would coddle me something fierce. And I loved her something fierce. And now she's gone. I wish I could have met her. Even if I'm not impressed that she pushed you into the service. I wish you could have too. My voice was growing thick. Maybe on my trip down to Florida with Jonathan and Max to visit the Owenses in the spring, you could come with? We could even brave the long drive and the tourists and take Elsa to Disney, if she's never been. I lived in an apartment the size of a walk-in closet in New York her whole life, Norman. No prior trips to Disney World. Well, I didn't know if David and Philippe had taken her to Disneyland Paris. I have no idea how well off they are, but with him flying all over to get her and escort her personally, I assumed they were rolling in it. Lois let out a bark of laughter. They're okay, but no. David saves up all year for those trips, and eventually Elsa will be old enough to make them solo. She's not a spoiled child, and she's learning the value of hard work from all of her parents. It's nice that you include Philippe, but honesty time here. How do you really feel about him stepping up onto your man? Oh, they were too remorseful to make me too mad, Norm. I noticed the nickname slip out, but said nothing. Eventually, they came to me together, after David came out, and swore that they hadn't done anything other than talk while David and I were still a couple. And Philippe, as much as he was in love with David, still felt terrible that David would be following him to the family vineyard, instead of staying in New York with me and Elsa. Now that was a tough pill to swallow. But apparently, Philippe's parents were ill, and he couldn't stay here, so... Anyway, it's all in the past now. Yeah, sorry, I'm too curious sometimes, I admitted. You always had to know all the things, when it came to the game and the guild anyway, since that was mostly what we talked about. Are you still like that? Are you an officer in your guild? Ha! Like they'd want me in a leadership role. They think of me as the court jester. Now, that's a role I play well. I remember. You're still probably the best at your character class, though. Let me guess. You play a rogue and have found practically every hidden treasure in the game. I preened a bit under her words. Well, yeah. Wait a minute. How do you know there is hidden treasure to be found in magecraft? You said you had no interest in the game. I lied, she said bluntly. Of course I'm interested in the game. It's only gaming ended badly for me before. Going back to it, it's a tough decision. Join our arena team, Lois. With your skills, if you played for, a week to get a feel for your class in the game, you could tear through other players with us in player versus player mode. Come on. Elsa's away, why not have a League of Magecraft Christmas? There was silence for a long time, and she sounded embarrassed when she said, I don't own a computer powerful enough to handle the graphics requirements. My laptop is 9 years old from when I was a student. Oh, well, that wouldn't do. That's not a problem. I have a spare laptop I can loan you until we can build you a new computer at the shop. No charge for labor, and the parts will be my Christmas gift to you. No arguments, no takebacks, it's done. I felt like a hero when I said that. Then she responded, No, I can't accept that. It's too big a gift. I know parts aren't cheap, and I know that Max's new computer was one of these friendship deals you pull, and it was free labor and parts at cost. Yeah, but now it's Christmas, I said, as if she was completely missing the point. Oh, Norm, what am I going to do with you? Whatever you want, kiddo.
Chapter 13. Lois. The boughs hadn't dropped on the tree as quickly as we thought, so the decoration party was delayed until Thursday, something I was secretly glad of, as it gave me some space from Norman to sort out my jealous feelings of the past with David and this new flare-up with Elaine. I was taking a cheese pie out of the oven when I heard the front door open and a loud, familiar "ho, ho, ho" at the door. Norman. It was officially what I was referring to in my head as date number 3, the decorating. The plan was simple. We would decorate the tree, have a cheese pie and mulled wine or hot chocolate here, and then the two of us would go for a walk downtown to see the window displays at night. Checking out the window displays downtown was always something I'd loved doing in New York, and while I knew Green Valley wouldn't have quite the glitz and glamour of the big city about it, the town was growing on me. Tomorrow night, we were going to the community center for a jam session, and while I'd never been a fan of country music, I was willing to give it a go. I had brought down Moore's ornaments, which Rose had said I could most definitely use to decorate the tree, though we'd still be using some of hers, given the beast's size. It would be a mashup of memories, and that sounded fine by me. I couldn't Skype Elsa in for the party, given the time difference, but I wanted to show her what we had done tomorrow. And I decided to include a tradition everyone disliked doing, but looked nice when it was done: the popcorn chain. I'd already popped 2 enormous bowls full, and they were waiting in the living room for some industrious hands to get to work. I bustled to the living room, checking my hair in the hall mirror, pleased with how it hung long and shiny after my lengthy attempts to tame it earlier. It was frustration with the way my hair would turn into a rat's nest that had compelled me to chop it off in high school. I had little patience back then, and I remember what a steadying, calm influence Norman had been on me. I'd hated my father for being invisible in my life, even hated my mother for dying, hated school, not the academic work, but the bullies, and was generally not a joy to be around. I wondered what exactly had attracted Norman Grant to me back then, and what on earth he was doing with me now. But here we were at date number 3, the kissing date. That's how I always saw it anyway, and I was a slow mover. Giving my V-neck green sweater and jeans a once-over, I made my way to the parlor, where Norman was espousing the virtues of the fir tree we'd picked out, dressed in a Santa jacket and hat. How could I not smile, standing in the doorway, watching him across the room dressed like that? His eyes were lit up, and with his shaggy hair peeking out from under the lopsided hat and his beard trimmed neat, he looked like a naughty holiday fantasy. All he needed was to be shirtless under that open Santa jacket and standing under some mistletoe and, whoa, Lois, get your hormones under control. He makes a striking figure, doesn't he? Rose said behind me, scaring the bejesus out of me and making me jump. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I was coming down to check on the mulled wine when I saw you standing there, looking all swoony. Rose, I hissed, not wanting Norman to overhear, though chances were slim given the racket coming from the parlor with Max and Jonathan in it too. It's okay, Lois. I was young and in love once too, she said, far more quietly this time. In love? How could I be in love with Norman? We were only on date 3, the kissing date. Thanks, Rose, but I'm not quite there yet, I intoned, and she nodded. Maybe it wasn't you I was referring to, she said, winking. She nodded in Norman's direction as he beamed over at the pair of us, though, admittedly, most of that look was directed at me. He then looked up, and a huge smile split his face. I looked up, and bam! I was standing right under a huge clump of mistletoe. In horror, I turned to Rose. You didn't, Rose! You bet your bippy I did. I hid my head in my hands for a second and looked up in time to see Norman swan across the parlor, headed for us women in the doorway. First, he bent down low and gave Rose a kiss on the forehead, saying quietly, "Merry Christmas, Rose." He next reached out and offered me his hand, which I took, and he led me around the corner. Satisfied that we were away from the mistletoe, yet feeling a slight churning in my belly, I wondered what he was going to do. He dropped my hand and reached up to take my chin in his hands. Then, ever so slowly, with plenty of time for me to stop him, he leaned in and gently pressed his lips to mine. Pulling back, he looked down at me to gauge my reaction. "We're not technically under the mistletoe," I pointed out, feeling almost lightheaded. "Yeah, but I figured you wouldn't want everyone to see." "You're right," I replied, leaning up and pressing my lips to his, applying more pressure than he'd applied to mine. He groaned, and I deepened the kiss, hoping he would get on board. The next thing I knew, his hand was in my hair and his tongue was running across the seam of my lips. I parted my lips to let him in, and he invaded my mouth, licking at me, our breaths coming in shared, ragged gasps. After a long moment, he pulled away and smoothed down my hair from where his hand had been in it. He rested his forehead against mine, and we looked into each other's eyes, his brown meeting my green, and I knew this was a turning point in my life. After waiting 10 years, I had kissed the heck out of Norman Grant. "I think I'm cool with hand-holding in public now," I gasped, and, smiling, pressed my mouth to his one final time. "Come on, before they send a search party. You should know by now how nosy they all are." Holding hands, we turned and walked back into the parlor, where everyone was suddenly looking like they were terribly busy. Uh-huh. "So, how much of all of that did you hear?" I asked casually, bringing Norman's hand up and kissing the back of it before letting it go so I could show him Mormore's ornaments. "How much of what?" Jonathan asked in a suspiciously innocent voice, and Max covered up her laughter by putting a hand over her mouth and turning around. "Real mature, guys," Norman said, and then ruined it all with, "As if you've never heard passionate kissing before. I know you two go at it like rabbits." "Norman!" I said. "Max's mother is right here." At this point, everyone was in some state of guffawing, Rose included, and I couldn't exactly stay mad. "Ah, young love," Rose said, pulling another ball of mistletoe from her box of ornaments. "Where should I place this one? Over the entrance to the kitchen? Or should I surprise y'all?" "Mom!" "Surprise us, Rose," Jonathan said, moving in on Max and pressing a kiss to her lips. Mormore's ornaments hung on the tree with care, the higher ones placed by Norman, who handled them like a newborn baby. They were pretty old, with quite a few coming from the old country, Sweden. There was a wooden red Dala horse ornament, which was my favorite, and was on every childhood tree I could remember at her home. The other ornaments were wooden too, mostly hearts and stars, straw reindeer and angels and gnomes. Then there were ornaments she had collected throughout her life here in America, mostly shaped like eggs in all colors. Frosted with white drizzles and curlicues. Mixed in on the tree were Rose's decorations. Mostly cross-stitched ornaments, paper or clay ornaments made by Max as a child, and an impressive collection of geekery like Star Wars, Marvel, Disney, and even a mini TARDIS. We oohed and awed when the tree was lit, all holding mugs of mulled wine and toasting our efforts. I looked around at the shining faces, And though I missed Elsa so much I could almost cry, these people around me felt like family. And family was something I hadn't had much of in an awfully long time. While Rose, Jonathan, and Max settled in to watch Miracle on 34th Street and work on the popcorn chain, Norman appeared wearing his jacket and holding mine, ready to move our date along to downtown. We decided to drive and park for a shorter walk, because even though he hadn't complained, I was certain Norman had pulled something the day we brought in the tree. I mean, he had been wrestling the thing one-armed for a good chunk of the time, until he had set his cane down and used the tree itself to help support his body weight as we lugged it inside with Jonathan's help. This way, too, we'd have the truck if we wanted to make a run to Daisy's for a drink and donut again, which was becoming one of my favorite places in Green Valley. I loved the lattes, and was giving pleading eyes to Max most mornings for us to swing by before heading to the library for work to grab one. Norman held my jacket for me, and I shrugged it on, once again appreciating his thoughtfulness. We said goodnight to everyone, assuming Rose would be in bed by the time I got home, and off we went into the crisp night. He let me open my own door this time, without me having to pull a mad dash to get there first, and I was happy to see he was learning. Inside the truck, before we got going, I snuggled over next to him, and he put an arm around my shoulders, and I said, "I keep feeling like a giddy teenager again." "I keep feeling like I've been given the second chance of a lifetime, Lois. And I'm not going to blow it. I learn from my mistakes, and I don't make the same ones again. Letting you go was the biggest mistake I've ever made, and I don't intend to do it twice. Unless you want to go, of course. I mean, shh, I know what you mean." I kissed his scruffy cheek and playfully tickled his beard. He was still wearing the Santa hat, but had left the jacket back at the house. I plucked the Santa hat from his head and plunked it down on mine, and he smiled as he started up the truck. I scooted back over to put on my seatbelt, my excitement mounting, not only about seeing the lights, but about Norman and me. If I could truly let the bad parts of the past go and hold on to those good times in my heart, then I think this could be that second chance he mentioned. Maybe. Hopefully? Yeah, definitely hopefully.
Chapter 14, Norman. Our walk under the stars lit up by the displays on Main Street was damn well magical, with Lois holding tightly to my hand the whole time, at one point even looping her left arm through my right so she could take some of my weight on the return trip to the truck. I'd messed up my back on the excursion to get the tree, but I had hoped neither she nor Rose suspected anything. I was getting by alternating mild painkillers. After all the years that I've been off morphine, I still craved it, and I had to constantly remind myself at times like this that a fair bit of pain was worth it to be clear-headed and present in the moment, because at the moment, the present was good. Lois was sitting beside me at Daisy's, and we were talking about two of my favorite topics, computers and gaming. They used to be two of Lois's favorite topics too, and judging from the conversation, they still were. I had finally convinced her to take the laptop from me as a loaner, and I would surprise her on Christmas with a new computer, whether she wanted it or not. I had the money socked away, even after the recent build on Lucille and the cost of the move. And who could say no to a Christmas present? All I'm saying is Final Fantasy VIII was in no way better than 7. Worse story, weaker characters, and monotonous gameplay, period, I said, dumping some sugar into my fresh coffee. "You're wrong," she replied, munching on a bear claw. "The graphics in 8 were amazing for their day, and both the Guardian Force and magic systems were fun, not monotonous. But please, continue to hold on to your ill-informed opinions." You're pissy because you could never breed the golden chocobo. I finished, taking a long sip of my hot drink. I still play, you know. Piano, I mean. Remember when I sent you that MP3 file of you playing a selection of songs from Final Fantasy VII? Yeah, I do. I still have it. You do? I asked, lighting up. I would have thought she would have run that file through a shredder app by now, lest any traces be left on her computer. Of course I do. You played beautifully, Norman. But wait, I didn't see you bring a piano in the back of that truck of yours. Did you leave it in Florida? I squirmed in my seat. No, I sold the piano after my mother died. I couldn't stand to look at it anymore, remembering all the times she had forced me to practice and then how much fun we had on the holidays, me playing carols and everyone singing along. It hurt too much. It was one of the few things I've gotten rid of, to be honest. The trailer needs a going over and to be sold. I have a feeling this Green Valley thing is going to work out fine. I bumped shoulders with her. You know, Rose has a piano in the parlor, she sing-songed, poking me in the side. I am aware, I muttered under my breath, taking another sip of my coffee. I wasn't sure I would be welcome to play it, so I didn't ask yet. I mean, what if hers has super sentimental value too, and that's why it never gets played? Oh, pooh, Lois said, polishing off the donut and digging a wet wipe out of her purse. Instruments are meant to be played and enjoyed. I bet she would love some carols or something like the Nutcracker Suite played for her this season. I guess so, I said, suddenly wanting to change the topic. Lois doctored up her own coffee with cream and sugar and, as though sensing my mood change, she asked, I'm thinking about getting Elsa more interested in STEM. Do you think you could help her maybe once every 2 weeks or so? I thought the two of you could take apart an old laptop and show her how it works, the guts of it, things like that. She might take a shine to building computers or robotics or coding if we start her now. I mean, if I start her now. I smiled at her slip, though part of me felt like my heart had lurched into my throat with that we. What kind of we would we be when we were 3? Friday night and the famous community center jam sessions were here before I knew it, and though I would normally be raiding with the Guild of League of Magecraft on a Friday, I decided I could forego a week's worth of loot to take in one of the more popular local traditions. I was trying to lay down roots in this town after all, and besides, this was another excuse to escort Lois somewhere. Max and Jonathan were coming too, so it wasn't like they'd be playing Magecraft as Maximus Damage and Wrath and get the jump on me gear-wise. Jonathan had returned to the rental to get ready with me, and we were going to meet the girls at the center. As I put on a nice red button-down and dark wash jeans, I heard Jonathan holler from the common room. Did you remember the rule for tonight? Yep, no glove, no love, I replied, brushing my hair in the mirror on the dresser. No, you fool. I mean, yeah, that's a good one, but I meant about the coleslaw. Do not take the last helping, or Max will thwack you. It's like a thing in this town. Everyone loves it, and I gotta say, it's pretty damn tasty. Noted. It was nice of Rose to bake more snickerdoodles for us, so we'd have something to drop off at the dessert table, I said. So, has Lois been to one of these before, or is this her first time too? Jonathan asked, still hollering. I didn't know why these walls were as thin as paper. Nope, and yes. She's not a fan of country or bluegrass, which I find impossible to believe because she's usually so eclectic in her musical tastes. I'm hoping she will enjoy herself anyway. I worried at my bottom lip, but decided that if the night went poorly, then we'd do something else on Fridays. No one said we had to love the jam sessions. There's always an assortment of musicians playing all kinds of things, Max tells me, and that's what I saw at the one session I went to before. I wouldn't worry. Now, are you almost done checking your hair in there so we can hit the road? I gave a final glance to the mirror and nodded at my reflection. Not bad, I thought. I could do this. Date 4 with Lois. Oh my. Are we taking my truck or yours? I asked, knowing what he would answer. Mine! That bucket of bolts of yours isn't fit for the road, man. You've got to sink your savings into getting it up to par. I heard from Max, who's friends with one of the owners, that the Winston Brothers auto shop is fair. At least take it in for a look over and get a quote. I let out a ragged puff of air in annoyance. I knew he was right, but I also knew I was putting cash into Lois's computer for her Christmas present. I wondered how reasonable these Winstons were, and if I could cover both things now that I had to pay rent. When we moved to Green Valley, I knew that I would have to buy a new home eventually, which would mean letting go of my old one. I had to get myself right in the head to do that, because it would help me move on with my life and keep me solvent. We piled into Jonathan's truck, his stereo blaring Stairway to Heaven. He never did like carols, the weirdo. I sang along anyway, because come on, Led Zeppelin, but my heart was only half in it. I was thinking about my mom, and how much she loved this time of year, how we'd made the best of things after my father's death, and how she had these big, huge, pie-in-the-sky dreams for me. And so it was with a morose mood hanging over my head that we arrived at the community center, only for it all to change when I saw Lois standing near the door, chatting with some locals and beaming a megawatt smile. And then I remembered. Friday was payday, so Monday she'd be getting her new-to-her car. Maybe that was why she was in such an elevated mood. I made my way over to the group she was talking with and noticed her attentions were focused on one individual in particular. A tall man with a shock of red hair a few shades darker than Lois's, a beard, and quite a handsome face. I walked up to Lois, put my right arm around her waist, and pressed a kiss to her left cheek. "Norman!" she almost yelped. "Damn, you scared me. Well, now that you're here, I want you to meet Bo Winston. Bo, this is Norman Grant." Ah, another new arrival in Green Valley. The red-headed man smiled at me and stretched out his hand. I took it and shook it firmly, wanting to make it clear that Lois was with me tonight, lest he get any ideas. Then I had a brainwave. The car. That's right. Fresh up from Florida. So it's Bo Winston, is it? Are you by any chance one of the brothers who owns the auto shop in town? I am. He smiled wide, and damn if he didn't ooze charm. I bet he had women falling at his feet, and a few men too. I was discussing with Lois about picking up her car on Monday. That's great. My truck has been recently slandered as a bucket of bolts, unsafe to be on the road, and I'm hoping to get a second opinion on that from a qualified mechanic. Well, that'd be us. Give us a call on Monday, or pop on by and we'll get you an appointment. No problem, Norman. Thanks, Bo. We shook hands again, and I couldn't help but see Lois roll her eyes at the male posturing she was seeing from me. Well, see you two inside. Enjoy the night. My brother's on banjo and my brother-in-law is on guitar in one of the rooms.
Bo? Lois asked quickly. Do any of these rooms have a piano in them?
He scratched his beard. Well, now that you mention it, there's one in the room my brother is in, actually. Did you play?
No, but Norman here can tear up the keys. He's kind of shy, though, so...
Well, nothing to be shy about. Hop in and give it a try if you're up for it, man. Good luck. Hope to hear you play. And with that, Bo retreated inside the building, leaving Lois and me to look at each other awkwardly. Lois, I kind of resent being offered up for the town's entertainment, I began, but she cut me off right at the pass. And I resent you practically pissing on my leg. That man is my mechanic and is happily partnered off to a lovely woman who also works at his shop. You should be ashamed of yourself. I suddenly was ashamed of my caveman behavior. What had come over me that I'd staked a claim to Lois so publicly when we hadn't defined that we were even in a relationship? She was free to flirt with whoever she wanted, even though that wasn't what she was doing in the first place. Her mechanic, of all people, who was in a relationship anyway. God, I had to get a grip. I held up my right elbow to her and asked humbly, "May I escort you inside, madam?" To which she responded by taking my arm and nodding once, her saltiness obviously stowed away for now. "Jonathan has a plate of snickerdoodles from Rose for our contribution to the dessert table, in case you and Max didn't bring anything," I said, floundering for safe conversation topics. "I know. I was home when she made them. That woman can bake. She reminds me of my mama sometimes. I don't have many memories of her, but baking with Mama when I was a little girl is one of them." "I remember fishing with my dad. I know I had to go into the army because he did, but I stopped resenting him for it and remember the good times now. It helps. Same with my mom." Music was pouring out of every room as we made our way through the hallways, and it was in the most packed room that I saw a piano in the corner and heard some very capable musicians pumping out some fine tunes. It was a bit bluegrass heavy, but there was room for piano in there, I was certain. My stomach lurched. Could I jump in and keep up? Should I, to impress Lois? Maybe she'd mentioned it earlier because she wanted to see me play in person and not just on an old MP3 file. I decided to hell with my insecurities, and I was going to go for it. I kissed Lois on the cheek, hauled her into the room, and said, "Wait here," into her ear. Then I made my way to the front of the room and got the attention of the banjo player, pointing from me to the piano. He enthusiastically nodded his head, so I approached the old beauty and sat on the stool, cracked my knuckles, and got the feel for the tune. Then I was off. A few of the other musicians whooped when I joined in, and then we took it down a notch to a melancholier tune that the man on the guitar sang, who was likely the aforementioned brother-in-law of Bo Winston. It had been a long time since I'd improvised with strangers like this, but it was also fun as hell. I turned and saw Lois in the crowd, having pushed her way forward a bit, her eyes laser-focused on me and shining. I played for her, and if I weren't listening to the other musicians, I would have sworn we were the only two people in that crowded room.
Chapter 15. Lois. After Norman wowed us with his skills on the keys, he and I made our excuses to the many people who wanted him to keep playing and crept outside toward the back of the community center. Hand in hand, we giggled as we acted like teenagers, hoping we wouldn't get caught, but needing each other right the hell now, not after a drive back to the rental. I knew if I was riding an adrenaline high from watching him play, that he had to be even more keyed up after his performance, and all that energy crackled in the air between us, especially when he first got back to me in the crowd and whispered huskily into my ear, "I need you, now." I wasn't about to argue. My emotions when it came to Norman had lately taken a sensual and downright sexy vibe. We reached the back of the center, and he backed me up against the brick wall, then cradled my chin in both of his hands and stared straight into my eyes. How long had it been since a man had looked at me with such unbridled, feral desire? Had David ever? No, definitely not. I had never seen such raw hunger in a man's eyes and knew that I was about to be kissed the hell out of. I nodded my head once, and then he was on me, his mouth fusing to mine and our tongues in a desperate dance of pent-up passion between the two of us. And holy hell, would every make-out session with him feel like I was about to be consumed by fire? The chemistry between us was off the charts, and I groaned in relief when he separated my legs with one of his, giving me something to grind down on. By the time his hand had made its way up my shirt and my hand had started to unzip his pants, he stopped us, his breathing ragged.
"Lois, as much as I want this,
What is happening between us is too special to spoil with a quickie in the outdoors with half the town inside. I conceded he was right, but my hormones were involved here, as well as my heart, and my body demanded satisfaction. We righted our clothes and walked around the building to Jonathan's truck, me texting Max that I was getting a ride home with him. Luckily, the guys each had keys for each other's trucks, and Jonathan could hitch a ride with Max. We drove to Rose's place in near silence, listening to carols and my hand resting on his jean-clad thigh. Norman escorted me up to the front porch and kissed me so lightly, so gently, that I felt cherished as he held my hands in his. I held onto his hand as long as I could, with him eventually walking away, our fingers parting and my heart yearning. The next morning, I decided before breakfast to do something I had sworn I wouldn't do. I grabbed the laptop Norman had given me and double-clicked the League of Magecraft icon. I created a trial account and then spent about a half hour making Paley, an elf druid who could act as healer. The missing piece in a 4-person arena team, as I'd been told. They already had Norman as Death Drop, the rogue who attacked from the shadows, Max as Maximus Damage, the warrior who plain kicked ass, and her backup, Jonathan, as Wrath, the knight who could do limited healing but was not really meant for it. They were doing well as a team, tearing up the charts, so I'd been told, but would like to move up from a 3-person to a 4-person team if they ever found the right healer to gel with them. Well, I clicked on my free level up included in my new account, and suddenly Paley had max-level gear and abilities. I simply had to figure out how to play this game. But honestly, how hard could it be? I was great at Guilds of the Ages, and Magecraft was considered a spiritual successor to it. 3 hours later, breakfast forgotten, I was riding my mount, a zebra I'd named Galadriel, into battle, killing ogres and stealing treasure. This feeling I had rushing through my veins was old, familiar, and freaking awesome. It was almost noon when Rose gently knocked on my door, and I rather loudly, over the sounds of fighting coming from my laptop, said, "Come in!" She entered the room carrying a tray with tea, soup, and a sandwich on it. Bless Rose. And blast this game! I'd gotten into a fugue state where I'd lost track of time, my only focus on the next fight, the next puzzle, the next treasure. I logged off and looked up. She stood there, smiling at me, and said, "My Maxie and her friends got to you, didn't they? Oh, they wanted me to play that game with them too, but I couldn't figure it out. Too complicated for me. But you sounded like you were right at home when I came by earlier to check on you. Lots of yelling at the computer and the sounds of clashing swords, you know." Oh, I knew. I could get super involved in games like this, and that would explain why I was still in my nightgown, breakfast not eaten, my teeth not even brushed. I suddenly wanted a shower very badly, and to devour what was on that tray. As if, sensing my longing for the food, Rose placed the tray down on my bed and then pointed at the chair in the corner. "May I?" "Please," I said around a bite of sandwich. I quickly swallowed and, ashamed of my manners, said clearly, "Please do." Rose pulled the chintz chair over toward the bed and then curled up in it, her feet tucked under her. "I'm sorry I wasn't here to greet you when you got back from the jam session, but I was tuckered out after clearing the parlor and— oh, hell, that's not true. I was in my room, my nose buried in a romance novel about a very naughty Highland rogue and the lass he kidnaps. Then she kidnaps his heart." Rose looked a bit dreamy as she leaned over to the tray and nipped one of the crackers for the soup and started nibbling on it. "Sounds like a decent book," I said in between bites. "Oh, it is. So, how did the jam go?" I put the sandwich down. "Rose, it was amazing. They were playing mostly bluegrass, but I think that's supposed to be all string instruments, so I guess some country mashup once Norman got on the piano." "Norman played?" Rose interrupted, leaning forward in her chair. "I think I kind of dared him to," I admitted, feeling slightly bad, but not too much. "I was talking with one of the Winstons." "Oh, those men are dreamy to the last one." "Rose," I snickered. "I think Norman was jealous, and so I taunted him a bit. I asked Beau if there was a piano in the community center, and there was, in the room with the banjo-playing Winston, who it turns out is friends with Max. He's in her book club. And fuck it if Norman didn't get right up there and start killing it on the piano. Sorry for my language, Rose." "Honey, this might surprise you, given the graying hair and the motherly ways, but I have heard the word fuck in my life. Even used it a time or two. You aren't going to offend me. I only ask that while there is a child under my roof, we can the sailor talk. You don't speak that way around her anyhow." "Oh my God, Elsa! What time is it, Rose?" I almost spilled the soup in my rush to move the laptop closer to me and shut the game down completely, flipping open Skype. "It's okay, you've got time. That's why I came when I did. I know how my Maxie gets involved in her computer or lost in a book and loses track of what other things are important. You can eat your sandwich before your Skype date, which is in 35 minutes. I let my heart return to its normal place in my body from my throat and looked at the other woman with sheer gratitude. "Why couldn't you have been my mom, Rose? You're always looking out for me, were before you even knew me, and invited me to live here." "Well, we don't know what or why the good Lord does the things she does, Lois, but I do know I'm not the perfect mother. There are reasons why I was alone in this huge house while my daughter chose to use part of her grandmother's inheritance to buy her own cottage in the same town as me. I think I was too tough on my Maxie, or maybe too much for her to handle after her father's death, and I stopped being able to go out." I swallowed some of the soup and contemplated that. "But you know Max is crazy about you. She loves you very much. She goes to the Piggly Wiggly and the pharmacy for you and does whatever other errands you need. Though when I get my car in 2 days, that will change. I'm taking over some of those chores gladly." "But Lois, it would be my honor if you'd let me. You've been more of a mother to me in the last month than my own mother ever was." Rose looked down and picked at the horrendous chintz fabric for a moment, then looked back at me, eyes soft. "All right then, dear. Now, tell me more about your date while you finish up." "The foal is the smartest baby horse in the world, Mommy. I asked Philippe if he thought so too because he knows everything about horses, and he said yes. She knows that I'm her friend and will let me pet her nose and her flank. She's so soft. One day she will grow up and be a big horse, and when I'm a bigger girl, I can ride her, if it's okay with you," Daddy said. "We'll definitely talk about it, sweetheart," I said into my tablet as I sat in the parlor. Elsa had been wowed by our tree and the tour I'd taken her on of the house to show her what decorations we'd put up, like the evil mistletoe bunches and Mormore's gnomes, and she bemoaned that she didn't get to make a popcorn chain this year. David overheard her and said not to fear, that he and Philippe would go pop some popcorn right then and leave the two of us some privacy for the rest of our Skype date. "It certainly sounds like you're having a fun time," I said, smiling at her. It was impossible for me not to smile at my baby girl. when she was in a good mood, which was often. She had inherited the bright, sunny outlook on things from David's side of the family, I was sure.
Oh, I am. I never want to leave, except for I'd miss you too much, Mommy. I miss you now, and when I'm home with you, I never want to leave there, but I miss Daddy and Philippe. Do you think that's okay?
My heart broke for her, but I understood perfectly what she was saying. She felt caught between two worlds and didn't want to miss time with any of her parents, even though it was inevitable, because I had thought about it, and I was not moving to France. I know Elsa would have an excellent upbringing on the vineyard and have all her parents there, but I needed to think about my own happiness too, because I knew what it was like to be raised by miserable parents, and I would be miserable, I knew, if I didn't give what was going on between Norman and me a chance. I think that's perfectly okay, darling. I know it must be hard, always missing your mommy or your daddy and Philippe, but we have Skype, and we have our letters and your trips, right? And you know that no matter how far you go, you are always in the hearts of all three of us. There's nowhere you can go where our love can't find you.
That sounds like magic,
she said solemnly. Well, I think love is a type of magic, don't you?
Yes,
she replied, and then her face lit up.
Oh, I forgot to show you this book I found.
She was gone for a split second, and then returned, holding up a copy of David's anatomy textbook from university. We'd already explained to Elsa differences between biological sexes and various genders, and where babies came from, so I was curious what had caught her attention in the book. She opened it to an illustration of DNA and said,
Philippe told me that this is what our bodies are made of, but I told him no, that is a picture of our soul. What do you think, Mommy?
I teared up, suddenly missing my amazing kid so much in that moment that I wished I could reach through my tablet and take her in my arms. I think you're a very smart person, Elsa Bear. I think there's a lot of truth in what you say. Then I heard David calling out in French, and Elsa's face fell.
Mommy, Daddy is saying it's my bath time. He doesn't get the bubbles as nice as you. Maybe next time you can teach him how to do it right.
I covered up my laughter with a poker face I'd perfected for use around Elsa in times like these. Sounds like we have to say goodbye for now, sweetheart. Mommy loves you so much. Always remember that.
To the moon and back?
Always.
Chapter 16, Norman. I was working on Lois's Christmas present on my Sunday off, determined to get it done this weekend, when I got a ping on my cell. Lois. Magecraft? Me. For real? Lois. Paley's back, bitches. But only until the new year, I think. Should we round up the troops for some time in the arena? Me. Hell yes. I'll get them since I'm at Max's and they're both inside. Lois. Why are you in the shop on a Sunday? Backlog? We can always do this later. Me. Oh, fuck no, we're doing it now. I'll come pick you up and you can set up with me in the rental unit. I have to go there to play on Lucille since someone is borrowing my laptop. Lois. Okay, I'll be waiting. XO. XO. She was XOing me in a text? Yes! Go Team Norman! I made sure that I was at an okay stopping point with the project and then put away my tools at record pace, practically flying to the cottage to tell Max and Jonathan to mount up for arena time. I was the leader of our arena team, and it helped us with our group dynamics in general when we really needed it back in Florida during Max's visit, during the terrible time when Jonathan wrestled with his mental health. They were both in, and I was excited as I drove across town to Rose's place. Then my heart lurched when I saw Lois on the front steps, holding a bag. A bag too big to hold the laptop. It looked more like an overnight bag. Oh, good God above, please let it be an overnight bag. I'd give up tacos for a month if it were, I swore. She walked toward the truck, a smile on her face and her hair a riotous color of reds in the fading sunlight. She opened her own door, and she climbed in and stuffed the bag into the back of the truck. She explained, I thought I would invite myself over for a sleepover, if that's okay. I brought some DVDs. Jonathan is spending the night at Max's, so I know your pull-out couch will be free. My heart lurched, and my stomach roiled, and I momentarily forgot how to drive as I stared at her. She looked back at me in quizzical fashion. Is that okay, Norman? Did I overstep by inviting myself? Overstep? There was literally no way this smart, gorgeous, perfect woman could overstep anything when it came to me. No. I shook my head, mouth still slightly gaped open. I got it together and continued. No, not at all. Let's hit the road, Paley. And she beamed at me as I turned on another album of carols, this time Elvis's Christmas album. No one did Christmas like the King, and there was no better music to get us in the mood for a relaxing and hopefully romantic evening. Get off my best friend, you jerk-faced troll! Came Max's voice through the headsets we were all wearing. Lois's Paley was under major attack because everyone knew to go for the squishy healers first. I crept through the shadows as Death Drop, coming up behind the troll player and bam! Stabbed him clear in the back while he was distracted by Max attacking from the front. The troll went down, and now we had two of these other players to contend with. Jonathan was making short work of their healer, who was nowhere as badass as Paley, and soon, with a bit of teamwork, the battle was won. It was our third victory in a row as a team, and personally, if it weren't for the amazing woman sitting in my living room, I would have skirmished all night. I typed into the chat box to Jonathan privately. Me. Dude, she's spending the night. As much fun as this is, get Max on board with us ditching for now. I want the rest of the night with her. Wrath. What? Go Norman. Don't worry about Maximus damage over there. I'll take care of her, no biggie. Now shoo. Enjoy. Remember the rule. Me. Don't eat all the coleslaw. Wrath. No glove, no love, you fool. Me. I don't think it's going to be that kind of sleepover. Wrath. Well, enjoy it, whatever it is. If you don't log off in like 3 seconds, I'm going to tell everyone about how you always cry during Titanic. Why are the boys being quiet? Max said over the voice chat. What are you plotting? Spill. My guess is they're talking about how I'm spending the night at the rental with Norman. Lois chimed in. What? Max screeched, like an excited teenage girl. Yeah. And to be honest, I've had my fill of this game for the evening. I brought DVDs and I want to have time to watch one. Oh, and Norman? Yes? Will you drive me to the library in the morning so Max doesn't have to pick me up? Of course. Okay, logging off. This was fun, guys. I can see the appeal. I'll keep playing with you until Elsa gets back, but after that, I make no promises. We all said our goodbyes and logged off at around the same time, leaving me sitting in my room, wondering what was going to happen next. Then I began a frantic tear around my room to make sure it was reasonably clean, with no boxers in the middle of the floor or anything. I was usually neat as a pin, a holdover from how I was raised in the military, but I wasn't taking any chances, and, satisfied, I then cupped my hand in front of my mouth and exhaled into it, smelling my breath to see if I should hop into the bathroom and brush my teeth. My breath passing the sniff test, I gathered up my courage and whispered to myself, just breathe. It's Lois. It'll be fine. I left the still, sad-looking room and came out into the main one where Lois had been industrious while I was being foolish. She had put the laptop away on the coffee table and then pushed the coffee table all the way up to the television, making room for the pullout, which she was sitting on. Hey, you, she said. And I would swear if it were anyone but Lois, I would have called her tone-shy. I got this far, but I didn't know where you keep your clean sheets. Or if you even have another set for this. I should have asked before leaving Rose's. This bed is the same size as mine there. No problem, kiddo. I've got the spares on the shelf in the closet in my room. I'll be right back. I returned moments later with the first set of sheets I could grab, and 2 pillowcases, too, and presented them to her, feeling like a knight in shining armor. That is, until we unfolded them to tuck around the corners of the mattress. Are these Pokemon sheets? She asked, trying to conceal her laughter, and failing miserably. Now I could lie and say they were Jonathan's, but the huge turquoise head of Bulbasaur looking back at me demanded I keep my honesty policy. Yeah, and they weren't a gift. I picked them out, because I like freaking Pokemon. Elsa loves Pokemon, she said, smoothing out the top sheet while I wrestled pillows into the matching Jigglypuff pillowcases. That's something you two can talk about when she comes back, in case you were worried. You know, about how to relate to a 6-year-old. I tossed the second pillow onto the bed and looked her in the eye. Lois Washington Nee Jensen. Are you making fun of me? No, honest, she said, her eyes twinkling and her mouth twitching at the corners. I think it's cute that you two have a shared interest. She'll like that, too. And we both like Star Wars, apparently. Don't you think she's a bit young for that? Norman Grant, are you criticizing my parenting? No, honest, I said. I was thinking about nightmares of hands flying everywhere in Sarlacc pits. Well, you may have a small point there, but Elsa is a bright kid. She knows the difference between fantasy and reality because we discussed it at length. She's aware it's all pretend. We put the duvet back on in silence, and I thought of what to say. As the silence stretched, I thought literally anything would be better than this awkwardness that had settled over us. Lois, Norman? She said at the exact same time. You go, I said, standing there, feeling like something big was brewing between us. Norman, I'm a direct person. You know this about me, so I'm going to be direct. I want to share this bed with you tonight. I'm not ready for sex, but I want to feel your arms around me and snuggle into you and just be. Can you do that for me? We faced off across the bed, and I gripped my cane like a lifeline. Could I do that for her? Hell yes I could, if she could. You know I have scars, I began, wanting her to understand the full extent of what she was asking. That doesn't matter to me, Norman. I want all of you, even your scars. And I need to sleep on the left side of the bed so you don't squish my hip or leg. Not that you're heavy, and not that I would care if you were, but I need to have space on that side because it hurts most nights, and... You're rambling. Are you nervous? Did I ask too much of you? She sounded concerned. She cocked her head, her tongue wetting her lips. No, I said, walking around the bed to meet her. You asked just the right amount. I brought my lips down to hers, then dropped my cane and entwined my other hand in her silky hair. Her body fit against mine like it was made to be there, and in that moment, in the sharing of breath and the glide of tongues, I felt like I was home. I never wanted to let her go. I wanted to feel the press of her breasts against my chest, the curve of her waist under my hand, which had worked its way down from her face to rest there. Her hands had settled over my ass, pulling our hips together, and that was fine by me. We kissed like the world was going to burn, and these were our last moments together. I'd never been with a woman so passionate, with so much heat between us, that I felt I might get scorched. After a few minutes, or 10, or 20, who could count right now, she broke it off, and snuggled under my chin for a moment before murmuring, Want to climb into bed and watch a movie? Panting slightly, I adjusted myself in my pants, which were way too tight at this point, and muttered, Uh-huh. She let out a deep, throaty laugh, and then made her way over to her bag, pulling out a handful of DVDs, which she plunked down on the coffee table. We should get into our pajamas before we settle in. Good idea, I thought. Then I could ditch these jeans which were still causing me problems. I'll be right back. The bedroom has its own bathroom, so the one out here is all yours. It should be clean because Jonathan is hardly ever here. Thanks, Norm, she said, and I loved hearing the old nickname from her lips again. Like, if the kissing weren't a big enough sign that I was forgiven, that would be. No problem, kiddo. I bent to pick up my cane, my back tweaking a bit in the process. Ouch. Well, at least we were going to bed so I could stretch it out. Lois, who must have had those eyes on the back of her head that every mother seems to, noticed. Did you hurt yourself? I wouldn't have minded grabbing the cane for you, you know. I bit the inside of my cheek. How to handle this? I know you mean well, but to be honest, which is my policy with you, I would have minded. I want to do as many things for myself as I can. But now you're in pain, she pointed out. You could actually help with that. I waggled my eyebrows suggestively. By giving me some stretching time before the movie, I said in a dirty tone. I found that if you said almost anything in the right tone of voice, it could be filthy. Norm, I thought you were going to suggest sexy times. Well, it would be pleasurable for me, stretching, I continued in the deep, sexy voice. Anti-inflammatory cream, a heating pad, acetaminophen. Rawr, she replied, making clawing motions in the air. You sure do know how to get a girl's motor running. It's a lost art that I personally excel at. She threw her pajamas at the bed, picking up a silky top and, oh so slowly, walked toward me, lifting her shirt over her head as she did so, revealing a lacy pink bra that did almost nothing to conceal the hard nipples underneath it. She slipped the silky top over her head and then advanced on me. When she reached me, she stood there, running her tongue over her lips, making them shine in the lamplight of the room. Then, she performed some kind of wizardry where she undid her bra and took it off, underneath her top. The bra went sailing back in the direction of the bed. Do I get an A in the lost art of seduction, too? She practically purred, and I swear I could almost feel my pupils dilate. Oh my God. Uh-huh, I answered, my mouth gaped open and the wood in my pants not going anywhere. Maybe you should go get started on that routine of yours, Norm. I'll be out here, waiting. Well, if that wasn't motivation to hustle, I don't know what was. But I also knew better than to rush when my back was involved. I slowly moved to my bedroom and closed the door behind me, leaning up against it and letting out a ragged breath. That woman! What was I going to do with her?
Chapter 17. Lois. I grabbed my toiletries bag and entered the small bathroom, which was, much to my relief, exceptionally clean. I quickly did my nighttime routine and left the bag on the counter for the morning. Next, I walked out to the bed where I'd tossed my silky pink pair of sleep shorts. I preferred my flannel granny nightgowns, but I longed to look and feel a bit sexy with Norman, and I knew he would appreciate the way the camisole clung to my bust, and the shorts were just a touch too short. At least, I hoped he would. I had a thrum of nervousness running through me as I tucked my dirty clothes away inside a laundry bag in my duffel I'd brought. Then I went back to the pullout, sitting down and making several sexy poses for Norman to find me in, until I thought, to hell with it, and climbed inside the Pokemon sheets under the duvet on the right-hand side of the bed. I twisted around a bit to get in a comfortable position where I could still see the television at the foot of the bed, and noticed that Norman was taking quite a long time. Perhaps I should help him with the cream he had mentioned? Or maybe he was having a hard time getting changed after pulling his back. About 10 minutes later, wearing hideous red pajama pants with a Christmas tree theme and a band t-shirt, Norman emerged from the bedroom, a heating pad in his free hand. "Get in here," It's a bit cold," I complained, sure that Mrs. Potter had capped the heat on the thermostat. "Shouldn't we pick out a movie first?" he asked, walking to his side of the bed and plugging in the heating pad, spreading it out flat where his lower back would go. It was the exact same brand I used for my menstrual cramps. Not that I was going to point that out. "Yeah, I forgot about that. The DVDs I brought are on the table, or we can watch something of yours if you like." "Nah, we'll pick from your pile. Let's see." He sat on the end of the bed and picked through my offerings. He held up National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and proclaimed, "Shitter's full. We have to watch this one, kiddo. It's a holiday classic." "Go for it, but be warned, I'll be asleep by the time we hit that part." "That's cool. I like falling asleep to movies or audiobooks. Audiobooks mostly. I have a huge collection. I put them on my tablet on the pillow next to me and fall asleep to the story. It kind of reminds me of being a kid and being read to by my dad." As Norman got the DVD going and lay down in the bed beside me, I turned on my side so I was facing him. "I remember you used to be a big reader when we were in high school. Are you still into sci-fi and fantasy?" "I am, but I read almost anything, or rather, listen to about anything these days. I finished A Court of Thorns and Roses and am reading Red Shirts next. I also started reading romance after you argued with me so effectively back then that they are books to be taken seriously. I loved the Outlander series, though perhaps that's not strictly romance, and I enjoyed the Bridgerton books." "Wow, I'm impressed. I haven't made it through the most recent Outlander book. I get so busy with Elsa, and back in New York, I was too stressed to relax and enjoy reading. But I think now that we're settling in and things aren't as crazy for me with bills and worrying about being a bad parent, I'll have more time to read again. Something other than bedtime stories I read to her, anyway, even though she can read them to herself by now. There's still something special in being read to. Hence why I love audiobooks so much. I pop them on in the shop sometimes when I'm working there alone. Jonathan prefers to work to music, and I don't mind that either. So it's usually some kind of classic rock going on." I moved my feet over and captured his right foot in mine, gently rubbing up his leg with my foot. As much as I loved talking to Norman, I was getting tired, and I wanted to snuggle my man. Whoa, where the hell had that thought come from? My man? Was that what Norman was? Oh boy, I'd chew on that for a while before talking about it with him. But for now, it was time for Operation Snuggles. I placed my hand on his chest and asked, in a voice a tad huskier than normal, "Do you usually sleep with a shirt on? Because you can take it off if you want. It would be nice to cuddle skin to skin." And with that, I slipped out of my camisole and tossed it onto the floor, leaving my breasts bared to him. He groaned and quickly got with the program by likewise sending his shirt sailing. I smiled and made an appreciative noise as I stared at his chest, and he chewed on his lower lip as he looked at my breasts, and the air felt thick between us. I felt ready to pounce, and then I remembered his back. "Hey," I said, gently pushing on his left shoulder until he was flat on his back. "Stay on that heating pad, okay? I don't want you to hurt yourself because I whipped out my tits." "But what a way to get hurt," he said, flashing an impish grin. "Just lie there and I'll cuddle into your side, if that's okay?" "Yeah, definitely more than okay." He lifted his right arm and I snuggled into his side, pressing our chests together as much as I could and placing kisses on his collarbone and pecs as I settled in. My right leg was over his. The hideous pajama pants surprisingly soft and comforting. He started running his right hand through my hair and then placed it on my bare back, tracing designs on my skin. If I'd been capable of it, I'd be purring, it felt so nice. He smelled of clean soap and medicated cream, which was part of the package that was Norman. I breathed in deep at his neck, and he chuckled low, saying, "I'm not watching the movie at all. Are you?" "Nope, not a bit." I couldn't help myself. I licked his skin below his collarbone and reveled in the taste of him. He groaned again, and this time he was in motion. Quick as the flash, he had me on my back and was loosening the string on my sleep shorts, sticking his left hand inside and making his way to my core. "Is this okay?" he asked. I parroted back his earlier reply to me. "Yeah, definitely more than okay." I slightly parted my legs, making this easier for him, and he was there, fingering my curls and exploring me, parting my lower lips. It was my turn to moan, and I did, as he worked me over with the experience of someone used to working with their hands. It had been so long for either of us since we'd been intimate like this with someone else that I wasn't surprised when I came with a gasp and a shudder after mere minutes, my back arching off the bed. "Oh my God, Norm, that was, oh my God." He touched me gently until I couldn't stand it anymore, and I pulled his hand from my shorts, only for him to stick his fingers into his mouth to clean them off. Holy shit. "You are hotter than hell itself, Lois Jensen," he said, leaning down and pressing a soft kiss to the corner of my mouth. "You should lie back down," I said, still gasping for air. "Your back—" "My back is fine. Or it will be by the morning, don't you worry. I wanted this." "Do you want some reciprocation after I can breathe properly?" "No." He kissed me again, then lay back down flat on his heating pad. "You're delicious." "Perv." "Prude." We both laughed, and I don't know who started the tickle war, but by the end of it, we were both naked and curled up with him on his back and me against his side again. I fell into the deepest sleep I had had in months, and all was well. "Oh my God, Norman, you have to taste this," I said, holding out my fork with a piece of French toast on it. With real maple syrup, it was like heaven on a plate, and I couldn't remember a breakfast I had enjoyed so much. Norman leaned forward, took the bite off my fork, and made a noise of satisfaction, nodding his head. "Yeah, I'm so getting that next time," he declared, returning to his stack of blueberry pancakes. "These are pretty great too, though." It had been his idea to wake up early and come to Daisy's for a decent breakfast before taking me to work. We had awoken this morning to a mess of twisted arms and legs, wrapped around each other as much as possible. Norman had been sporting some morning wood, and the only thing that confused me was when I tried to go down on him, he softly pulled me up and shook his head. I only knew David in bed, but I'd never known him to turn down a blowjob in the morning, so I was flooded with self-doubt until Norman whispered in my ear, "Not yet, sweetheart. I want us to enjoy what we've had so far and not go too fast. Not when you're still starting to trust me again. Okay?" "Okay," I whispered back, my heart thudding in my chest. He respected me. He cared for me. He wanted me to trust him. I didn't know how to handle the flood of emotion in that moment, so I put on my proverbial practical Lois panties and got out of bed and called dibs on the first shower. "What are you thinking about, Lo?" Norman asked, reaching for his coffee. "This morning." "It was a nice way to wake up, yeah?" he asked, sprinkling some sugar into his cup and giving it a stir. The first time I've woken up to anyone else in almost 6 years, other than my daughter. Well, while Elsa isn't around, you know you're welcome anytime. We never actually did get the movie watched. No, we didn't. I laughed, then blushed, remembering what exactly had interrupted us and made me so sleepy. As soon as I'm done with my coffee, I'd like to hit the road if that's okay with you, he said, then took a long swig of his drink. I was surprised, as that would put me at the library extra early, but I supposed the maintenance closet could always use a decent reorganizing. I ate the rest of my French toast rather fast, moaning a few times in ecstasy as the deliciousness passed my lips. Breakfast at Daisy's? Definitely one of my favorite parts of living in Green Valley so far. When I looked up from my plate, I saw Norman staring at me, slack-jawed, holding his coffee cup in the air. What? I asked, confuddled. Well, I was going to ask if you two wanted to be alone. He pointed at my plate, then to me. I coughed, half laughing, and grabbed my orange juice and downed the rest of the glass. Hey, if you had that on your plate, you'd sound like you wanted to be alone with it too. I suppose. Hey, you ready to hit the road? Almost. I need my purse. I reached out and grabbed it. Norman interrupted me with his. Nope, I've got this. Well, all right then. I smiled because I never said no to free food. We went up front and paid up, and Norman led me to his truck, his hand on my lower back, as though he were staking a claim on me in public. I can't say I didn't like it, though, so I said nothing, and even kept my mouth shut when he walked me to my side of the truck. He did, however, let me open my own door. I can't see a thing under this, I complained as we drove along a twisty road with the blindfold thick and keeping me in the dark, literally and figuratively. Well, it would be pretty piss-poor kidnapping if you knew where I was taking you, he said, having produced the blindfold right after we had gotten into the truck after Daisy's. That was 10 minutes ago, and we had to be wherever we were going soon. There weren't many places in Green Valley that were more than 10 minutes apart, even with morning traffic. Right on cue, we pulled into somewhere and Norman turned off the truck. You ready? He asked, and when I nodded, he pulled off the blindfold and I saw the Winston Brothers Auto Shop? And my Sentra, right there in front of the truck, glistening like it had been washed and polished. Oh my God! I was going to get Max to drop me by here after work to meet Beau and settle up for the new vehicle. I hadn't been sure how I was going to concentrate all day at work knowing what was waiting for me. Well, apparently Norman had the same thought. You considerate son of a bitch! I wiped my eyes, which had filled with tears. What was I going to do with this man? This kind, selfless man who had once broken my heart and was now trying to redeem himself in every way possible. Well, this was a big, freaking move in that direction. This everyday thoughtfulness, this way he wanted to make my life easier, even if it were trying to find my dropped towel or get me to my car early so I could drive myself to work. Hey, don't cry, he said, reaching over and handing me a Kleenex and holding it up to my nose like I did to Elsa. Blow, he commanded, and I did, despite my embarrassment at the overflow of emotion. How is the car ready to go now? They weren't expecting me until after work. I managed. I called Beau Winston when you were in the shower, he explained, looking cheeky as all fuck. You called him? At home? Norman! I scolded, scandalized that he would have potentially woken up my mechanic to arrange my car surprise. No, silly. He was already in the shop. I asked him on Friday night at the community center what time he normally got in. He already had the car washed and waxed and ready for you. It was simply a matter of pulling it around front, and now you going in to settle up with him.
Come with me,
I said, pulling on his arm before remembering that he had to exit his side of the vehicle. This was a big moment for me, and I wanted Norman with me to see it. To see that I was building something down here in Green Valley, even if it were friendships and a job, and now a car. I felt independent and alive and wonderful, like I was building a life. And yeah, it may have just been a gray Nissan, but when Beau put the keys in my hand, I turned and kissed Norman so hard, he practically tipped over.
Chapter 18, Norman. As I watched Lois peel out of the parking lot of the auto shop, I couldn't help the feeling of pride that came over me. Sure, I'd had nothing to do with her ability to buy a car, but I was proud of her and this achievement anyway, and pleased that I had been able to whip together a sort of surprise for her. Then, as I was getting ready to hop back into my truck and head to the shop, a man with a slightly chaotic beard approached me. He had the name Cletus embroidered on his overalls, and I assumed this must be another one of the Winston brothers. "You here to have that looked at? I can fit you in. I heard the sound your truck made pulling in, and I didn't like it." I let out a puff of air and relinquished the keys, giving in to the inevitable. "Do you guys have a place where I can sit down while I wait? My leg's a bit twitchy today." It flat out hurt from last night's activities, for, as careful as we'd been, we couldn't control the rolling around that happened once we had fallen asleep. Lois and I both slept like egg beaters. "Why, yes we do. I'll show you where. Come on." A half hour later, after my truck had failed to be deemed roadworthy, I was driving a loaner Dodge Neon over to Max's while the staff at the auto shop had assured me they could fix whatever the hell was wrong with my truck. Despite my uncle's efforts to teach me when I was younger, I didn't know crap about cars and how to fix them or what could be wrong with them. But I knew that the shop had a good reputation, which set me at ease that they wouldn't charge me $500 for a single screw or some shit. I didn't finish Lois's Christmas gift over the weekend, but I couldn't be sorry about it given how yesterday and last night turned out. I whistled as I made my way into the shop, bobbing my head and then flat out singing, "I'm in the mood for love." I waltzed my way inside, grabbing a bemused Jonathan and whirling him around in the open space at the front of the shop, dancing with my good friend and giving him a twirl. He broke off from me and, laughing, said, "Ha, good night?" Oh man, the best night. "I'm in the mood for love," I crooned, continuing to dance solo. "Simply because you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love." You already sang that part, doofus. Shh, is the only part of the song I know. I'll put up with your singing for 5 minutes. After that, I'm playing Last Christmas by Wham, and you're losing Whamageddon like 4 years in a row. My own best friend would do me dirty like that, all because I feel the spirit of love moving over me? Dude, let me do you a solid and tell you flat out, never use the word love again. I thought that over for a moment before nodding solemnly. Duly noted. Any other great advice this morning? Not great advice, he began in an upbeat tone, but news. Max and I worked in here after Arena yesterday and almost all night, getting us caught up on our back orders, and 2 more rush Christmas orders came into the shop. I told them there's no way they are getting them on time unless they pay a courier, and they both are down for it, so we've got work to do. Sweet. Considering I'm pouring my life savings into my truck, Lois's computer, and making rent. I really have to get back to Florida, man. After the holidays, maybe in the spring, I need to clean out Mom's trailer and sell it. I swear, Jonathan almost tripped over himself walking to his workbench. You're serious? You think you can let it go? I scratched my beard and ran a hand through my hair, like I did whenever something weighed heavily on my mind, and replied, "Yeah, I do. I'm ready." There was something about getting away from there and those walls around me that was so empowering. And then to find Lois again, it was like a freaking miracle, man. I'm not going to live in that trailer alone again. Jonathan turned his attention to the project on his desk and absent-mindedly passed me a stack of paper with the specs of the machine I was to build. Lois's present would have to wait. These were super fast orders, and mine seemed a bit complicated. "Yo, do we have all the parts in stock for these?" "No, but the graphics card for yours, the processor, and the extra monitors are arriving tomorrow. I got them rushed. Don't ask what it cost. We'll pass it on to the customer anyway in their shipping bill, since this was a last-minute thing. They said that it was cool." "Fair enough," I agreed. Then I couldn't resist adding, "L is for the way you look at me. O is for the only one I see. V is 2 more minutes, man, then we're going to Wham Town." "I need a date idea for Lois and me," I mused aloud near the end of our workday. "Well, do you want to go fancy or more homemade?" Jonathan asked. "Both, I think. I don't need one date idea, I need a slew, because I plan on lots of dating in our future." "Ah, Norman, hope springs eternal with you, doesn't it? Hey, after the night and morning we had, you'd be hopeful too. But I need ideas, man. I don't know this town well yet. And I don't want to take her to my place for a movie or to the jam session over and over. I want to vary it up. Sure, I can be spontaneous, or at least a tad imaginative when it comes to these things." "So, naturally, you're asking me to figure it out for you?" I scoffed. "No. I'm asking because you had 4 more whole extra days here than me. And you have an in with Max. You know Green Valley better." "Okay, well, there's the obvious course. Dancing at Jeannie's, which we've already done as a group, but I think she would enjoy it more with you solo now. A fancy dinner at the front porch, and I heard there's a Christmas market she might like to go to." I grabbed my cell out of my back pocket and opened a new note to myself. "Oh, hold up. Let me write this goal down. Front porch, fancy. Jeannie's, not so fancy. And a Christmas market. Perfect level of schmaltz. Thanks, bro." "You're welcome. Does she like horses? Because there's this place I know. They do hay rides." "That might be better after Elsa is back. She loves horses. We could take her there to feed them apples or something, and then maybe in the summer she'd be interested in going riding, the 3 of us." Jonathan looked at me funny. "You're already planning the trips or dates or whatever with Elsa too? That's serious, Norman. You can't get a child involved unless you're like super committed to the relationship. They get attached so fast, you know. Have you and Lois even defined what you are yet?" "No," I admitted. And I know you're right. I have to be careful around her daughter. I don't want to build up expectations and then have it all taken away if Lois and I don't work out." "That's assuming Elsa even likes you," Jonathan said, tossing a balled-up rag at me. "Hey, what's not to like?" I replied, grabbing the rag, tightening it up into as solid a projectile as I dare make here in the shop, and threw it at his head. It pinged off the back and landed on the floor. Woot! 3 points right there. You know, Max's backyard where it touches onto the woods will be a perfect place to play with our Nerf gear. I take back that element of doubt I may have planted in your mind. Elsa's gonna love you, because you're practically a 6-year-old yourself. Oh, stuff it, mister. I threw the rag first. In typical Jonathan fashion, he ignored me and kept working, whistling a tune I couldn't place but would drive me crazy until I did. I scanned around for the maintenance closet and found it, door open, Lois pushing the cart inside. Perfect timing. I walked up behind her, and instead of scaring the shit out of her, like I would do if this were Max or Jonathan, I decided to play nice. I coughed to get her attention, But apparently that was scary enough because she flailed around like a ninja and turned to see who it was behind her. "Norman, you scared the hell out of me." I chuckled because I couldn't win with this woman. I held out the latte as a peace offering, and she looked at it, to my face, to the latte, and back to my face, her expression softening. "You brought me daisies?" she asked, and I mutely nodded. She stepped forward and took the cup from my outstretched hand, then reached up and kissed me on the cheek. Only for some little shit who looked about 12 to say, "Ooh, Miss Lois has a boyfriend," accompanied by kissing noises. "Yes, she does," Lois replied, ignoring the cacophony of kids and turning to lock up the closet for the end of shift. Meanwhile, I stood there stock still, not quite believing my ears. Did Lois call me her boyfriend? Lois thought of me that way? Holy crap! Okay, stay calm, stay cool, I told myself. Confirmation was needed before losing it. We held hands before we left the building, and as we approached her car, I asked, "So, I'm your boyfriend?" She flushed red and answered, "What else was I supposed to say back there?" My heart sank like a stone until she said, "But I would like it if you were my boyfriend. I know we've only been together for over 2 weeks, but we've got something here, don't you think?" I literally had to stop myself from throwing my cane to the four winds and breakdancing on the spot. Yeah, I do. Think, that is, about you. I mean, about us, you and me. I've wanted to be able to call you my girlfriend since I was 17 years old. I never thought I would get the chance, having blown it so spectacularly. Is that what you really want, Lois? You and me? Because I am so there. I'm so ready for you and me to be an us. She gulped down some latte and nodded as we reached her car. "You know that I'm a package deal, right? That it's all well and fine to want that girl I was at 17, but I'm a mom now. Elsa must come first in my life, no matter who I'm dating or how crazy about them I am. And I would hope that she would come first in the life of whoever I'm with." "I understand, Lois. That's how I want it too. Elsa first, then each other." "Well, all right then. I guess we're in a relationship. Do we kiss on it to make it official?" Damn straight we do, I thought, as I lowered my head and captured her lips with my own. We kissed like we always did, like it was the last time or the first, like it had to be savored and appreciated and felt to the very core of our souls. Okay, so maybe I was a bit of a sappy romantic, but honestly, I was feeling things I'd only ever read about, and I was reveling in it. "Wow, okay," she said softly, panting hard after we'd broken apart. "It's official, like, really official." She raised her right hand to her mouth, letting the fingers run over her lips, smiling as she did so. "As much as I'd like to stay here and make out in the parking lot of where I work, I need to run to the Piggly Wiggly to get some groceries so we can cook supper tonight. What are you and Jonathan doing? He's staying at Max's again?" "Nope. He's home and I'm making veggie wraps and salad. He can like it or lump it." "Or go bum food off Max," Lois said, grinning. "Okay, I've got to go. Thanks for the latte, Norman." "Oh, wait, there's a bear claw for you in my loaner car. There was only so much I could carry." "Sweet. I could use an infusion of sugar right about now." She stood by her car while I retrieved the wayward donut and deposited it into her waiting, grabby hands. "I'm assuming the loaner was because your truck needed a bunch of work?" Yeah, everyone makes fun of it. But it's brought me here safely to you, right?" I knew I was playing fast and loose with the definition of safely, but if she didn't ask any questions, then the point would stand. "I believe I've heard you yourself call it a bucket of bolts, or something similar," she mused while I cringed. "Okay, so it's a love-hate relationship I have with it. Still though, that one Winston, Cletus, he told me that it was worth saving rather than junking it and starting over with a new car. He sounded like he knew his stuff." Cletus. I've heard that name before. Oh, he's in Max's book club. A friend of Max's wouldn't screw you over. I felt relief ripple through me, considering we were talking about my life savings here, which were dwindling. Well, I won't keep you. The Piggly Wiggly awaits, I said, and couldn't resist opening her car door for her once I heard her hit the unlock button on the key fob. She stubbornly reached out and wrested the door from me, closing it herself with a mighty slam and sticking her tongue out at me. That's my girl, I thought, and waved at her as she drove off.
Chapter 19. Lois. The next few days were hectic, and I didn't see Norman. No, scratch that. The next few days were hectic for him in his shop. For me, they consisted of my usual routine at work, and then playing Cards Against Humanity once with Rose, Max, and Jonathan, reading Rose's historical romances, doing chores for the house with my new car, or doing quests in Magecraft with Max. I knew Norman and Jonathan had picked up some local business, the gossip chain of Green Valley having caught on that there was finally a computer shop in town. They had several Christmas orders, and I also knew that Norman felt compelled to take on the brunt of the workload right now. I wasn't sure why, but I think it had to do with money, and I understood all about needing extra money. Then, on Friday, he popped up at the library at the start of my shift, looking a tad sheepish, latte in hand. I know I've been MIA for a while, but I swear I'm not ghosting you. I got caught up in my orders and even had time for a side project. No more crazy late hours for me. That's good. You could stand some time to relax, I said, taking the latte from him and planting a kiss on the corner of his mouth. Every time I saw Norman as a man and not the skinny, shaggy-haired teen, I swear my breath caught in my throat that I was allowed to kiss this man, to hold him. He was so gorgeous, with defined muscles in his arms, but a bit of a dad bod in the front, and a pair of eyes that could ensnare a person. And those hands. Those hands. What they were capable of drove me wild. Lois, you there? He asked playfully, and I knew I missed something while I was daydreaming about his incredibly sexy body. Yeah, sorry, just wool gathering. I was wondering if you wanted to go to the front porch for dinner with me tonight, instead of the jam session with the gang. The front porch? Isn't that kind of swanky? Do you even own a suit? I'd only ever seen Norman in band t-shirts, Henleys, or light sweaters and jeans. The thought of him in a suit was suddenly very appealing. Yes, I own a suit. Do you even own a dress? He sassed back, and I laughed. Okay, it was a silly question. But of course I'll go with you. It should be fun. I haven't been out to a fancy restaurant since David was wooing me, and even that wasn't fancy. I'm actually pretty excited about this. Then, to distract from my runaway mouth, I punched him lightly on the shoulder and took a huge gulp of latte. I should get in there. The library won't clean itself, I said, a tad too cheerfully. Why did I suddenly feel awkward? Was it because I'd mentioned David and wooing to Norman? Probably, I decided. New plan. Don't regale your new boyfriend with tales about your ex-husband. I'll pick you up at around 6, okay? Our reservation is for 6:30. Sounds perfect. With a discreet kiss, I turned and made my way into work. Oh my God, I own nothing that's appropriate for a fancy dinner! I wailed at Rose, my room looking like the closet had exploded, flinging all my clothing onto the bed. Calm, child. There are 3 dresses right there, and they all would be fine.
Especially if you put this one here, the green, with a shawl I have. It would make your eyes pop and look gorgeous with your hair. Now slip into that dress, honey, and I'll go get my shawl. Then we'll do your hair and makeup. When did you say he's coming? In 15 minutes? Well, I've worked miracles under harsher conditions than this. We'll have you turned out like Cinderella going to the ball. Now dress! And with that, Rose left to go to her room, and I pulled the green silk dress down over the slip I was already wearing. I next pulled on some hose and picked out my go-to pumps that had seen a lot of mileage, but were still in fair condition. When Rose came in bearing a beautiful green and red shawl that was obviously an antique, I couldn't help but tear up. The dress I was wearing was sleeveless, and this would make it appropriate for both the weather and the Christmas season. See, my dear, nothing to fuss over. Wear this and remember to break out that gorgeous smile of yours from time to time, she instructed firmly. I laughed and nodded, and then we set to work on taming my hair into an updo. By the time Rose had finished slipping a borrowed earring into my left ear, I heard the doorbell ring, and I felt like $1,000,000. I'll get it, I hollered, already halfway down the stairs. When I opened the door, I went completely slack-jawed at the sight which greeted me. Norman was dressed in a deep navy suit, complete with a waistcoat, and his beard had been freshly trimmed. He held out 2 bouquets of flowers, and I immediately knew what he was doing. "Rose," I said, unable to keep the huge grin off my face, as I noticed that one of the bouquets had red roses in it, and the other purple, my favorite color. "Why, what in the world?" Rose exclaimed when she appeared, and Norman held out the bouquet with the red roses in it. "Thank you, Norman." She then plucked the other bouquet from my hands and said she would get them both into water right away and would place my flowers up in my room. If Norman was out to impress tonight, he had certainly started on the right foot. We drove to the restaurant, singing along to another of Norman's holiday albums, this time doing a rousing rendition of "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree." Norman was a surprisingly good singer, whereas I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Not that I let my terrible singing voice stop me from joining in. I found I wasn't embarrassed around Norman like I thought I might be. He was, after all, the boy in whom I'd confided all my secrets as a teen, and there wasn't much now that I wouldn't share with him, bad singing included. After we were shown to our table by a pretty woman named Hannah, our server, Deverin, gave us the 411 that this was the place in town to get a steak dinner. I told him we'd need a few minutes, and I looked over to Norman and said, "Let's go Dutch tonight. That way we can each get a nice steak dinner and neither one of us will be unfairly burdened. I know all about money being tight, and now that I can afford a place like this for myself, I'd like to pay for my own meals. Besides, you've paid every time we've gone to Daisy's." "But Lois, I invited you here. I checked out the menu online to make sure I could afford it before I asked. I won't argue with you about a dinner check of all things, but I will say that I want to spoil you a little. I think you haven't been spoiled enough in your life as an adult, always putting Elsa first, and I think it's time someone stepped in and took care of you. Not that you can't take care of yourself, but that's not the point. The point is, I want to do this for you. For us. Okay?" I couldn't help the smile that burst out across my face. "Okay, then, but I'm getting the steak and a Caesar salad, and maybe a glass of wine?" "Sounds great," Norman said, grinning back. Dinner was everything I had hoped it would be, with Norman behaving like a perfect gentleman and the conversation flowing as freely as the wine. We talked about comic books,
He preferred Marvel and the indie scene, while I could never give up my love for Clark Kent. And the movies we had seen, books we had read, anything to catch up on the last 10 years. I finally told him the whole story about NYU, and he looked sad for me when I said that I had dropped out, but then confused when I told him that I had managed to get my Associate of Applied Science and Business degree by taking online courses while caring for Elsa. He did have one question, though, which I had been anticipating. If you have a degree from NYU in business, even if it's not a bachelor's, why are you working as a library janitor? I mean, why aren't you working for some company here, like Peyton Mills or in Knoxville? Would it shock you to know that I actually enjoy being a janitor? Look, I know it's not what everyone dreams of doing when they grow up, but I love working at the library. I love the vibe of it, the faces I get to see every day, the routine to the work, and then the not-so-routine stuff. And it was the first job that was on offer when I moved here. I know Max advocated for me no matter what she says. I was sort of using my degree in New York, and I was miserable at that company. God, I can still feel my ass being pinched when I think about it. Maybe I won't work at the library forever, but for now, it's good for me. And I believe in the value of honest work. When I look back, I think that there were some shady practices going on at my last company. I took another gulp of wine from what had to be my third or fourth glass and looked at him earnestly. Well, I have to respect all of that, and I do, kiddo. You're something special. But I've been having a brainwave, and I want your advice, as a business person, before I run it by Jonathan. That okay? Sure, shoot. I leaned forward, paying close attention. The wine was getting to my head a bit, but I wanted to take in what he was going to say. Jonathan and I, when we started Supernatural Computers, went with an online business model because where we lived, there was no place or point in having a storefront. There wasn't the population in our town to support us. But here, we've been getting word-of-mouth orders from people in Green Valley just by working out of Max's garage. I think if we went into the repair business as well as building, we could manage a real store and workshop. But we would need someone to run the business end and the customers while we took care of the nuts and bolts. Jonathan already does the customer interactions and the finances, and he hates it. How it detracts from his time building. I think within the next year, we'd be ready to expand if we keep on our current trajectory. If we did expand, would you be interested in coming on board? We couldn't pay much more than what you're making at the library, not at first, but you'd be using your degree and be integral into getting our venture off the ground. He took a long sip of water and waited for my answer. I think that's the most I've ever heard you talk about business, Norman. And it's sexy as hell. I took my foot out of my pump and rubbed my hosed toes over his right pant leg. He coughed and almost spat out the water he had in his mouth. Okay, that's it. I'm officially cutting you off and taking you home. To my home, so Rose doesn't see me bringing you back all loopy. My God, that was it was 4 glasses of wine. Jeez. I guess we were talking and Deverin kept pouring. Yes, let's go back to your place, I said, thinking that was the best idea I'd heard, ever. Norman signaled for our check and settled up while I retrieved my wayward pump and then weaved my way to the bathroom to break the seal. I had overdone it with the wine because even though I wasn't normally a lightweight, I also hadn't had more than a glass or two since Elsa was born. At length, I emerged from the bathroom and Norman took my arm as I giggled and told him how handsome he was. My mood swings were making me nauseated. I didn't even complain when he loaded me into his loaner car and off we went to the other side of town to his rental. When he unlocked the door and threw the lights on, a boxer short-wearing Jonathan thrashed around on the pullout, obviously not expecting us to be laughing and turning on the lights. Cripes, how late was it? Ugh, what time is it? I thought you'd kind of creep in, Norman. I mean, I didn't know you'd have company tonight. Should I, leave? No, man. I'm a gentleman, and she's way too buzzed for anything like that to happen. I'm going to tuck her into bed with me so Rose doesn't see her like this. Better give Mama Bear a call or she'll worry all night, Jonathan offered. Already done. She told us to have fun. He laughed. I know I'll have fun if she doesn't puke on me.
Hey, I'm right here, I piped up. And I'm not drunk. I'm a bit tipsy. Hey, Jonathan, Norman and I are going to snuggle, and one day we're going into business together. Have a good night.
With that, I sashayed across the room and entered the bedroom, carefully putting Rose's shawl over the back of Norman's desk chair and pulling my dress off over my head. I could sleep in my slip, but there was no way I was sleeping in the hose. I kicked off my heels, and when I bent to take the hose off, there was a loud thud that I registered before I realized that it was me hitting the floor.
Chapter 20. Norman. I learned a few things after our dinner at the front porch. First, a buzzed Lois was a Lois that snored like a chainsaw, and second, my bed was not wide enough for two people who rolled around in their sleep. I slept mashed up against the wall, and that meant that Lois was lying on my bad hip and leg for most of the night. I didn't want to wake her by getting up to take pain medication, but at around 3 o'clock, I couldn't stand it anymore and had to wrangle her to the other side of the bed so I could get out and get to a painkiller. I decided to take some ibuprofen with it too, and smear some pungent anti-inflammatory cream on my hip and leg in the bathroom. I hated that my leg and hip were so sore, because of my plans to go to the Christmas market with Lois tomorrow, well, later today actually, and I didn't know how up for walking I'd be. My doctor had suggested I get a walker for the difficult days, but I didn't want to go there yet. I knew it was a stupid pride thing, and there was nothing wrong with using mobility aids, but I felt I could manage with my cane for a while yet. I went back to the bed and Lois was awake, watching me in the dim light coming from the bathroom. "Sorry I woke you," I said softly, not wanting to wake Jonathan. The walls in this place were paper thin, another reason that I saw this as a temporary living situation. At least it was a month-to-month lease, so we could leave whenever we wanted. "You didn't wake me," she yawned, and I knew she was lying to be polite. "How's your hip?" "Haven't had any complaints," I replied, trying to get a smile out of her. There we go. I'd knocked that concerned look off and she was grinning, patting the outside edge of the bed next to her. "I think you should sleep on this side. I'll take the wall, and I can sleep on my side. I'm sorry I was smushing you. I wasn't thinking about your leg or hip at all last night. That wine went right to my head. It's actually rather embarrassing." I turned off the light and walked over to the bed, feeling my way across the room. "Hey, don't be embarrassed, kiddo. I had a feeling it had been a long while since you had some real adult time. I mean, French toast at Daisy's in the morning is great and all, but getting dressed up and having a nice steak and wine? That's awesomeness, and I don't fault you for indulging a bit." "Oh, shit," she said, as I sat down and got ready to get into the cramped bed. "Did you call or text Rose? She must be worried sick." First rule of my philosophy to life, don't panic. I texted her, and then when she didn't reply to the text, I called her. I'm not sure she knows how to text, come to think of it. We should teach her. "We should snuggle down for another 6 hours," Lois replied sleepily. I heartily agreed, but I knew that unless the over-the-counter pain pills had magic in them, I was going to be sore until morning. My body was screaming for morphine, and I was glad I didn't have any left on me because I wouldn't be able to stop myself from taking some if I had access to it tonight. That was the bitch about morphine for me. I'd fought to get off it, with the help of my doctors, but I never fully stopped craving it. The next item to come out of my savings, a new, wider bed. I lay down with my left leg hanging slightly over the edge of the mattress, and Lois curled up into my right side. I put my arm around her and kissed her forehead as she fell back into a deep sleep, buzz-sawing it up again. After a splendiferous breakfast at Daisy's, I secured directions to the Green Valley Christmas Market. We were a week away from the big day, and I wanted to get some more of my festive spirit on. And plus, I thought Lois would appreciate it, because I'd heard that there were all kinds of local vendors set up with items that would make great gifts. She admitted she hadn't done any shopping yet, but wanted to get Rose, Max, and Jonathan all something small but meaningful. So I figured the market would be right up her alley. We'd had to go back to Rose's place first for Lois to change, return the antique shawl before some disaster befell it, and to ask her if there was anything from the market she wanted us to look out for to bring back to her. Promising to look for homemade soaps, we took off, the cooler air having us both in coats, and me wearing a pair of mittens. I knew this wasn't cold to Lois, but I was from freaking Florida. The light, slowly falling snow Lois called a flurry was mitten weather for me. Mitten hand-holding was a bit of a challenge. And once we arrived at the market, I took my right mitten off so I could sap Lois's warmth like a wraith. I had to say, Green Valley went all out on this whole affair. The Christmas market was like something out of a schmaltzy Christmas movie, which was exactly what I was hoping for. I knew Lois missed Christmas in New York, but this held up pretty good. There were plenty of vendor stalls, all looking like log cabins with fake snow on the tops, and wooden cutouts of elves where you could stick your head in a hole and get your picture taken. There was even a beer garden set up by genies. The pièce de résistance was the tree, which had to be at least 50 feet tall and decked out in lights. While there was Christmas music blaring over speakers right now, apparently carolers came out at night to sing by the tree. There were plenty of activities for children, and I figured that would make Lois miss Elsa, so I focused on keeping her busy. First, we hit up a drink stand, Lois getting an apple cider and me a hot chocolate so I could warm my hand. There was also the delicious smell of baking bread wafting through the air, which we followed to the pretzel stand and each got one. We found a table so I could handle both the pretzel and my drink, not having two available hands. Plus, my leg was aching like a son of a bitch. I'd take any sitting down time we could get. A boy wandered over to where we were sitting, attracted by the bright stickers I had all over my cane. They were all superheroes, except for a Hello Kitty sticker, and this wasn't the first time a kid had been drawn in to have a peek. I held the cane upright so he could have a look, and he then looked at me with wide eyes and asked, "Are you a superhero too?" "Nah, buddy, but I like them. Who's your favorite?" "Wonder Woman, but I don't see her here," he said in an almost accusing tone, funny coming from what appeared to be a 4-year-old. "I have Catwoman over here on the side, see?" I pointed. "She's pretty cool too. And over here I have Spider-Man and Iron Man, who are both my favorites." He seemed to consider this and nodded. "Do you have a grown-up you're here with?" I asked the kid, looking around for a frantic parent. Lois came over, knelt next to the boy, and asked, "What's your name, honey? We should find your family." "Oh my God, Pat, there you are!" The frantic parent revealed themselves. A woman came running over and knelt beside Lois, grabbing the boy into a huge hug. "I wasn't lost this time, Mommy. I was right here. Look at this stick." He pointed to my cane, and the mother put her face in her palm. "I'm so sorry. He will wander off the second you take your eyes off him, I swear to God. Did he bother you? I'm sorry if he asked questions that made you uncomfortable." No bother at all," I answered. "I love kids. We were actually asking him if he was here with a grown-up. We would have kept an eye on him while trying to find you." "Thank you so much. Pat, were you nice to them?" the mother asked, and Pat nodded solemnly. "Okay then, you can still have your reindeer ride. Let's go. Wave to the nice people, honey." Lois got up from where she was crouched on the ground, and we both waved Pat and his mother off as they went over to a pen with ponies that had fake antlers attached. "You handled that well, Norm," she said. "I haven't seen you interact with any children except Elsa, and she liked you well enough for the time you were together, but I wasn't sure how you'd be around kids in general. I like men who are good with kids." "I get attention from kids because of my disability," I explained. "I mean, even Elsa's first real question to me was if she could play with my cane. The stickers are also a draw. I didn't think of that when I put them there, of course. I put them on for me, but cartoons are a hit with the little ones, and I like how kids aren't afraid to ask the questions that embarrass adults, like what's wrong with me and how I got hurt. I usually tell them that I was a soldier and got hurt overseas, if they're old enough to understand that. I went into the whole story with Elsa because she seemed mature enough to handle it, and I also wanted you to know. I didn't want misplaced pity from Max's BFF for being a wounded warrior when I'm only a guy who was lucky enough to escape a burning vehicle." "Well, speaking of being wounded, how are you feeling today? I've noticed you're walking slower than usual and leaning on your cane or my arm more. Are you okay to stay here? The market is open until Christmas Eve. We can always come back another time this week." I was crestfallen at her words. I didn't want my disability to be something that held us back from enjoying time out together. "How about a compromise? Let's finish up our food and we'll do one trek around the vendor stalls. We'll also skip the beer garden, you lush. Sound good?" "Sounds perfect," Lois replied, taking an enormous bite of her pretzel and moaning at the salty, buttery flavor. That moan went straight to my dick, and I felt my pants tighten. Not here, you dope, I told myself. There were kids everywhere, and older ladies selling homemade beeswax candles for Pete's sake. I finished up my own pretzel and wiped my mouth and hands with napkins while I watched Lois fetch out one of her endless supply of wet wipes. It was tiny reminders like those wet wipes which drove home that Lois was a mom. I wondered if I would be able to keep my promise to her and put Elsa first, always, because right now, my heartbeat was practically spelling out Lois in Morse code. Bogged down with purchases, we made our way to Rose's house. Finishing up the last stanza of Last Christmas, covers were allowed under Whamageddon rules. We hollered for Rose to stay where she was in the parlor because we had gifts for her in our arms, and we made the trek to Lois's bedroom on the second floor. Curse these older houses that had stairs that were like a goat path, narrow and steep. On a good day, they'd be no problem for me, but today it hurt making the climb. Still, I didn't want Lois to know, so I sucked it up and followed along behind her. If she noticed my slower-than-snail pace, she said nothing. We'd decided to do joint gifts this year, which was awful coupley and simply fine by me. Max and Rose both got an assortment of homemade items, from soaps to beeswax candles to bath bombs. Jonathan was getting a nice knit hat and gloves, beeswax lip balm, and a book a local author put out about gardening in the region. He talked about wanting to do some landscaping at Max's for her, so we figured this would be right up his alley. I debated going back to the market later this week to pick up some items I'd seen Lois cooing over, but decided that the computer was a big enough gift, and I didn't want to overwhelm or embarrass her. People got funny about gifts sometimes, comparing who gave and got what, which I thought was ridiculous. I wondered what Elsa was getting for Christmas, and then remembered that Lois said she had sent some books over with David from the Little People Big Dreams series on Malala Yousafzai and RuPaul. She wanted Elsa to have a variety of role models, so I decided to pick up a few of those books myself to give Elsa when she came back. She could unwrap them under our tree at Rose's, since it would still be up when she returned. We wrapped our gifts to our friends in this wood-blocked paper we found at the market, which was expensive but looked amazing, and then trooped back downstairs to place them under the tree. I noticed Lois giving the branches tugs and declaring it was holding up decently, thanks to Rose's efforts to keep it watered. I kissed Lois long and hard on the porch before driving home, where I knew I had nothing waiting for me but an evening and a night alone in pain. Jonathan was probably at Max's, and while we said we would skirmish in the arena tonight, I didn't feel up to being our captain right now. I was tired, and my whole left side from the waist down was screaming at me relentlessly. I wanted relief. I wanted fucking morphine, or to down a bottle of vodka and pass out. But I also wanted to stay clean and sober, so I left in the neon and gritted my teeth as I drove across town, hating my body, and driven to the point where I hated the world itself.
Chapter 21. Lois. The buzz of my cell phone interrupted me as I was dusting the magazine shelving area. I knew I wouldn't catch hell from Twee for using my cell for a minute during work. She knew we all had lives and families, but I still wasn't a fan of it going off unless it was an emergency. Jonathan. Hey, Lois, you hear from Norman lately? I tried his cell like a dozen times and he isn't answering, and he didn't show up in the shop today. We're swamped, so I didn't go over to the rental yet to see if he's there. I was hoping you'd heard from him. Me. No, I haven't heard from him or seen him since Saturday, at the Christmas market. I think he was in pain that day. Jonathan. Shit. Me. What? Jonathan. He used to drink a lot when he would be in bad pain. He replaced that with gaming, but he hasn't come online at all since Friday. I'm worried. I looked at my maintenance cart and the almost empty library and made a snap decision. Me. I'll be at the rental in 15 minutes, less if I can manage it. Jonathan. Thanks so much, Lois. The spare key is under the planter on the left side of the front door. Me. I'll let you know as soon as I know anything. I wheeled my cart back to its closet with a sense of urgency and then ran down the basement steps to Max, who had her headphones on and was vibing to something while cataloging. I tapped her on the shoulder, and she threw up her arms in the air and dropped the book she had been holding. Christ on a cracker, Lois! What the hell? Is something wrong? I don't know, I said, out of breath. It's Norman. Apparently no one has heard from him since I last saw him on Saturday, and he was in a mess of pain then. Jonathan messaged me, and I said I'd go to the rental to make sure he isn't drinking himself to death. Okay, so maybe I was exaggerating, but remember the exploding half-empty glass? Yeah, this was the time when stuff like that crossed my mind. Oh my God, Max said, putting her face in her hand. We were so busy this weekend. We didn't check in with him. He can get low when he's in a lot of pain, Lois. The painful spells, the really bad ones, the ones that put him on his ass. He used to be on morphine for those, and when the morphine stopped, he started drinking. He doesn't do it anymore, but maybe I should come with you. I sighed in relief, because that was exactly what I was hoping she'd offer. Plus, this way, we could present a united front to Twee about why we needed to leave in the middle of the workday. 10 minutes later, with her blessing, I was almost speeding in my Sentra to the rental, my heart pounding in my chest and my hands shaking. Where was the Lois who could handle anything? She had fled the coop, and I was a ball of nerves and tension. The man I loved was in trouble. The man I loved? Like, loved? Yes, I told my inner voice. This was the man I loved, and we were getting to him even if I had to plow through this car in front of me going at least 10 miles below the speed limit. I honked on the horn and made a rather dangerous pass, which had Max screeching like a banshee, and had us at the rental in moments. When I pulled up to the curb, she said, Who are you? James freaking Bond? When someone I love is possibly up Schitt's Creek, you bet I am. Someone you love? She said as we ran up to the front stoop. Stow it for now, Max. The extra key is supposed to be under this incredibly heavy planter. Help me?" She leapt into action, us both hefting the planter, and I grabbed the key in triumph, then asked Max if she would mind waiting on the stoop unless I needed her inside. She gave me a quick hug and said of course she would, and, with trepidation, I opened the door. The apartment was neat as a pin, but the bedroom door was closed. I heard a small voice call out, "Jonathan, thank fuck you're here." "It's not Jonathan, it's me," I said as I opened the bedroom door. "Well, damn," he responded. He looked as white as the quilt he was huddled under, the sweat beaded on his forehead and his hair wet from it and his body shivering. He looked like hell, and I was suddenly so scared that I started to shake too. There was an empty water glass on the bedside table, which I walked toward and filled in the bathroom. I went back to Norman and sat on the bed beside him, helping him lift his head to get down some water. "Tell me what's going on, Norman. How can I help you right now? Do we need an ambulance?" "No," he said sharply. "Sorry, they'll want to give me morphine or something like that, and I can't go there again, Lois. I can't. You don't know how hard it was to get off that poison. Yes, it helped take my pain away, or at least took my brain to a place where I didn't care about the pain. But the cravings, the need for it, it wasn't worth it. I weaned off it slowly over 2 years. 2 freaking years to get off morphine. No ambulance." "Where are your other painkillers? Your cell? I don't understand how it got this bad." I helped him get to sitting, and he groaned a bit, but reached for the water cup, took it, and drained it in a millisecond. "I ran out of pills last night. I had my cell, but it went dead, and the charger is in my truck. My hip and my leg sometimes, they get so bad I can't walk that far. And overnight the pain, oh my God, the pain, Lois. Lois, are you here? I hoped Jonathan would come. I've pissed myself because I couldn't make it to the bathroom and back this morning. I fell trying. My leg went out from under me, but I did manage to climb back into bed. You'll never want to be with me now." "Norm, I'm here. I want you to listen to me, okay?" I pulled out my most authoritative voice. "You're in hell, and I know that. I have some pills in my purse, and I'm going to get them to you right now, and in about 20 minutes, you should start to feel better. No morphine, I promise. Just Tylenol and Advil, okay?" At his nod, I rummaged through my purse and grabbed 2 Tylenol and 3 Advil and refilled the water glass. He took the pills and drained the entire glass again. "Okay, now this is going to suck, but you're going to have a shower. You don't want to be lying there in your own sweat and mess, do you?" "Fuck no." "I'm going to get one of the kitchen chairs and put it in the shower. We can get you onto that chair, and if you can't wash yourself, I can wash you down while you sit, okay?" "Yeah, sounds like a plan." "Now wait 2 minutes while I tell Max to go back to work and put in my excuses with Twee for the rest of the day. There's no way I'm leaving you like this." "Max is here. Don't let her see me like this, kiddo. I couldn't stand it. It's bad enough you are." "Max won't know a thing other than you overslept, your phone went dead, and you're feeling like shit, so she can tell Jonathan you won't be in today." "Thanks, Lois," he said, his voice sounding like it was coming from between gritted teeth, and I felt he was preparing himself for the walk to the shower. Well, this time he wouldn't fall, because I would never let him. "I'll be right back." I leaned down to kiss him, and he pulled his head away. "Sorry, it's only that I threw up in the trash can. I tied off the bag so the smell wouldn't be so bad, but trust me, you don't want to kiss me right now." I leaned down and kissed his forehead instead, gently wiping his brow, then clasping one of his hands tight. "I'll be right back, I promise." I first sent Max back to the library, assuring her that we would be fine and asking her to make my excuses with the boss. Next, I grabbed the slimmest of the mismatched wooden chairs from the kitchen and headed to the bathroom to place it inside the shower stall. I turned on the water to a nice temperature and put a washcloth in the soap where Norman could reach them. I noticed my hands were still shaking, and I told myself to get it together right the hell now, because he needed me. I knew he said his bad days were few and far between, but this was one of them, and I was going to get him through it, damn it. When I got back out into the bathroom, my composure restored, I found a naked Norman sitting up on the bed, rubbing his left thigh. I picked up his cane from where it was on the floor and handed it to him, and then put myself beside him and heaved his arm over my shoulders. He was a lot stronger and more determined than I gave him credit for, because even though he cursed every other step, he made it the dozen steps to the shower and plunked himself down in the seat, making a noise of relief when the warm water hit him. "Oh, Lois, I forgot to ask you to get my gabapentin from the medicine cabinet. That will help a lot. It's for nerve pain. 3 of the yellow pills, please." "Sure thing." I got the pills as Norman found the washcloth and soap and started to clean himself up. I cupped my hands and he opened his mouth, and I kind of tossed the pills in while he let the water pour into his mouth and then swallowed. He nodded and then sort of lay back in the chair, eyes closed. So I took that as my cue to take the washcloth and soap from him and finish up as fast as possible. When he said he could do his own hair, I ran out into the living room and pulled open the pull-out, deciding that it would be quicker to get him onto that bed than to make him wait while I changed his sheets. With a bit of help from me, he rose in the shower, using the wall and chair for support, and I turned the water off, confident that the painkillers I had given him were doing something by now, even if it wasn't enough. I grabbed a fluffy towel off a shelf and began patting him down, careful to avoid his left lower side. It felt good taking care of him, treasuring him, and I knew I would do whatever he needed of me. I handed him his cane, and we began the same awkward walk as earlier, this time to the pull-out couch. I laid a fresh towel over the pillow so his wet hair wouldn't soak it, and tucked him in under the blankets because he was still shaking a bit. "Thanks, Lois," he said, grabbing my arm. "I'd have been up against it today if you hadn't come by, and thank you for staying. I know that wasn't pleasant." "Don't thank me for doing the bare minimum for someone you love, Norman. Of course I came, and of freaking course I didn't leave you like that." "Someone you love, huh?" He smiled then, and it was so needed that I didn't even berate myself for picking what on the surface seemed like the worst possible time to drop the L word. "Yeah, someone I love. Now, where is the stinky cream you put on that hip and leg of yours?" "I can do that if you grab it, and a glove, since I won't be able to get up and wash my hands. It's in the medicine cabinet. Gloves are with the first aid kit under the bathroom sink." "Done," I said as I scurried off, my heart racing. I had told Norman I loved him, but Norman was in a hell of pain, and this kind of situation couldn't continue. We had to focus on what was important here. Just then, I had an idea. I returned and tossed him the tube of cream, got him another drink, and wrote down on a slip of paper tacked to the fridge what time he had had his meds and what he had taken. "Norm, when you moved here, did you investigate finding a new doctor? Perhaps someone with a specialization in pain? My Mormor, she had a pain doctor who would give her injections in her back. Maybe you need injections in your hip." "I used to get them every 4 months through the VA. They helped, but I haven't in a long time. I used to have to drive to Jacksonville for them, and it was a pain in the ass. I got used to living with how things were, and they haven't been this bad in ages, Lois. I swear, If you think I'm always like this when we aren't together, you're wrong. It hasn't been this bad in, a whole year. I'm not usually so... God, I'm trying to think of the right word. Helpless. I'm not normally so helpless.
You're not helpless now, Norm. You had a run of bad luck. I mean, I know that fall didn't help you any, and that wasn't your fault. Running out of your pain meds was probably more my fault than yours. I've kept you so busy that you haven't been on top of things here, and even Jonathan is at fault because he shouldn't leave you here alone for days on end. I mean, what if you'd been abducted by aliens? How would we know?
Jonathan called you, though, didn't he? Norman said, settling down more under the blankets. He looked exhausted, and I hoped that he would be able to rest now that he was clean, in fresher sheets, and had taken some things for the pain. He texted me. He was worried sick, and he was going to come over here himself, but I guess you guys got in a last-minute order that was complicated? I don't know. I don't care. I'm glad I was the one who helped you. And hey, where's that heating pad of yours? You're all dry under there by now, yes? Yeah, and it's out here, over there on the other side of the couch.
Well, I'll wrap your hip or leg in it, whichever part hurts worst. Do you need me to run to the pharmacy to get anything else, other than your pain meds?
You're leaving?
He asked, suddenly looking incredibly young and vulnerable. No, I'm not yet. I was thinking about ducking out after you've gone to sleep and had some time to feel better, but I'm not abandoning you, Norm. I promise I won't ever do that. Not when you need me.
I always need you, Lois. Not because of my screwed-up hip or leg or anything. I always need you here.
He reached up and touched me lightly between my breasts. Dude, are you trying to cop a feel? I teased, holding his hand in place, then bringing it up to my mouth so I could gently press a kiss to his palm.
No, you fool. I'm demonstrating my love for you by touching your heart.
You always touch my heart. No demonstration necessary.
Chapter 22, Norman. When I woke at what the alarm clock told me was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I found fresh bottles of all my meds and a huge glass of water all on the bedside table. Curled up into my side was Lois, who had at some point stripped down to her bra and panties and was loosely holding my right hand, and had one arm arced up over my head like she was protecting me. My body was due for another dose of meds, I thought, but I couldn't be sure, so I'd have to wake her. That's when I saw a note on top of the Tylenol. Eat me at 3 or later. God, how I loved this woman. She'd seen me at my worst, and instead of freaking out or getting other people involved, she respected me and cared for me, my body and my privacy. I was at about a 4 on the pain scale now, which was amazing considering I was at a 9 through the night, and reached over, shaking out some new meds to keep them in my system and prevent the pain from ramping back up. As I was settling back in, I heard the door open and saw Jonathan peek his head inside. "Man, are you okay?" "Shh," I replied, pointing to Lois, who was now moving and making little moaning noises, reminding me of a kid who doesn't want to get up in the morning. He nodded and came over, sitting down on the floor by my side of the pullout, and said softly this time, "You look a lot better than I figured. We need to do something to make sure this doesn't happen again, man. I shouldn't have left you here alone for so long without checking in. I feel like hell about that. I don't need a babysitter. Last night and this morning were the result of a clusterfuck of epic proportions. But I can tell you it won't be happening again. I'll take better care to keep on top of things so it doesn't get that bad again. And I'm going to try to get a doctor up here through the VA in Knoxville maybe, who can start up my hip injections again, since I'm going to be more active than I was in Florida, I think." "Damn, Skippy, you're going to do all that?" Lois piped up sleepily. "Hey, Jonathan, Thanks for the texts this morning. It all went okay. You don't have to worry. Lois brought her hand down and threaded it through my now dry hair, and it felt amazing. It felt amazing every time the woman I loved touched me, and now that I know she loved me in return, even better. I got us all caught up at the shop, and I shut down the online order form until the new year. We could both use a break, for our mental and physical health, Jonathan said in a voice that would not be argued with. We tried to do too much too fast, I think. I know I've been a bit more anxious than normal, with a relocation and then thinking about possibly expanding, and with suddenly having a woman in my life. I know, I yawned, and then said, Sorry, but I am so tired. Do you think you could spend the night at Max's again? She's not sick of your face yet? No, you jerk, she's not. Of course I can't. But I expect those sheets changed. About that, I want you to take the main room until I get around to buying a bigger, better bed for myself. This one is so much more comfortable. Oh, don't give me that Eeyore look. We didn't know when we were doling out room assignments that you were sending me off to sleep on something with broken springs that was also too narrow for me and my girl. Also, in my defense, you didn't have a girl back then. Fair points, all, Lois said, sitting up, forgetting that she was wearing only an almost see-through pink bra. Lois, I began as Jonathan threw an arm over his eyes. Top, you're not wearing one. Ack! She exclaimed, and pulled the blankets up around her. My clothes are here. One sec, Jonathan. I watched her as she got out of bed, this gorgeous red-headed goddess that was all mine. She slipped into the long t-shirt she'd had on under her cardigan from work, and then pulled on her dark jeans. I'm dressed. You can drop your arm. I couldn't possibly have traumatized you that much. Max has a pair of breasts, too. Hey, when it's your best friend's girl, it's an entirely different scenario. I mean, do you want to see my bat and balls? I don't think so. I see your point. As much fun as this conversation is, I butted in, I need to go to the bathroom and I'm buck naked under here. Anyone who wants to watch can. I threw back the covers and grabbed my cane, which Lois had thoughtfully placed against the bedside table. Man, give a guy a little more lead time on that, okay? I don't want to see your naked bits, Jonathan protested. Oh, shush, you big prude. After my trip to the bathroom and a thorough brushing of my teeth, Jonathan was gone, so I sauntered around the apartment naked for a while, exercising my leg and hip. I had spent way too long lying on it, and that was also the reason my lower back hurt like it did. Lois was working in the bedroom, cleaning up in there, and I was so freaking grateful. I longed to shout my gratitude to the universe that had brought us together again and given her a forgiving heart. She appeared a moment later, my red fuzzy pajama pants and a plain black tee in her hands. I didn't think you'd want to get down on the floor to do your stretches in the buff, she explained. Then she unrolled my yoga mat and asked me if I needed a spotter. No, this isn't the trampoline. I just need to get down to the floor, and I can do that on my own now. I'm feeling much better, honestly. If you want to leave, even, I'd be fine. I never want to leave you, she almost whispered. Then she got down on the floor beside my yoga mat, crossing her legs and reaching up her arms for me to have something to grab onto if I needed it. So, you want to tell me more about your condition? I mean, the prognosis, what I can do to help, that kind of thing? Well, I began, lying on my right-hand side so I could do the left leg raises that were part of my routine. It's nothing too serious. I live in some level of pain all the time because the drugs I can use aren't enough to kill it entirely, and my balance is kind of messed up. Sometimes my left leg goes out from under me, like when I fell last night, hence the cane. But it never gets above a 6 normally on the pain scale. That's 6 out of 10, unless I mess up and do dumb stuff like fall or if there's a big barometric drop. Or if you walk around during the cold at a Christmas market while already in pain, and then push it further by walking up and down the steepest stairs in Tennessee. Kinda like that. Lois, I made those choices because I wanted to do those things with you. But yeah, you're right. I pushed too hard on Saturday, and then I couldn't move so well. I should have tried harder to get to my truck and that charger when I still could have made it. But it didn't occur to me that I was going to be at a point where I couldn't make it. I didn't know how bad it was going to get. Like I said this morning, it hasn't been like this in, at least a year, maybe a bit more. You don't have to worry about me. I lived alone in Florida. I can take care of myself when I make the right moves. I turned and flopped onto my back and brought both knees up bent comfortably. Then I yanked my left leg up and over so the foot was resting against the right knee. I took a hold of my left knee and gently did pulls and pushes, feeling the stretch in my hip. Do you do these exercises every day? 3 times, yeah. They're supposed to help, but I don't know if they do or not. Since it's no skin off my back to do them, I'm not going to stop for the sake of finding out. I don't want to be pushy here, but have you considered that you might need to be on a low dose of morphine, or some other drug like it? Or have a supply on hand so you can— No, definitely not. I know you're trying to take care of me, but you have to trust me when it comes to my own body. Yeah, I got all fucked up this weekend. That was my fault. And I won't do it again no matter how much I want to see you stick your face through a cardboard cutout of an elf. Okay? Okay, it's your body. You're in charge. She leaned over and planted a kiss on my mouth, and I knew we would be all right. We were on the pullout in the middle of eating pizza and playing a rousing game of Go, something we'd learned how to play together online back when we were teens, when I had a thought. Let's talk about sex. She belted out the lyrics to the song, snapping her fingers and bobbing her head. I love me some salt and pepper, but yes, because I think this whole experience of today has driven home the point that, yeah, I'm disabled. And that means, when it comes to sex, there are some things I can't do, or maybe I can do on one day but not on another. I want you to know what you're in for, because I love you, and unless I was very mistaken earlier, you love me, which means there shall be sexy times in our future. Hopefully in the near future, Lois smiled. Norman, I don't care about the things we can't do and the things we can. We'll enjoy a hell of a lot. And if we don't enjoy it, we'll stop and reassess. I'm usually the overprotective worrywart, but I think, in this, I have to say you're taking up that mantle. Because I'm not worried at all. Sex between us will be beautiful, no matter how it happens. Oh? I raised my eyebrow in challenge. Wanna see who can clean up Go and pizza faster? Heck yeah, I do. Cleaning up our supper and game turned into ripping our clothes off as fast as possible, with Lois elbowing me in the eye while taking off my shirt, and me getting her helplessly tangled in her bra when I tried to take it off over her head instead of taking the time to unsnap the thing. Finally, we were both naked, panting, and staring at each other on the pull-out couch. And I knew this was it. After 10 years of regret and longing, Lois Jensen was going to be mine in every way. And I'd be hers as much as she wanted me. Which apparently was a lot, because she was looking at me with a gleam in her eye that reminded me of something I'd seen on the Discovery Channel. You look like a lioness on the Serengeti about to leap onto a water buffalo. Slow. That's the first rule. We start out slow and see how things feel for both of us, but mostly because I don't want to overdo it. Got it. Slow. She got on all fours and crawled across the bed toward me, that look still in her eye. And, you can't, Damn, I was losing concentration, fast. She nuzzled her head into my collarbone and licked a line up my neck. You can't be on top, I panted. Sorry, but it won't work that way. Got it. She peppered kisses along the side of my face. When's the last time you had a woman, Norm? Sometime around the Nixon administration, I replied, closing my eyes and letting her take control for now. Her kisses were gentle, as were her roaming hands. "If anything I do hurts you in a bad way, tell me. I mean it. No pushing through because you're trying to please me." "Okay, oh, wow. Yeah, do that again," I encouraged as her hands had worked their way down from my pecs. She let out a throaty, husky laugh and kept moving her hands over me, and I felt like something freaking precious. I leaned in and captured her mouth with mine, her lips parting and letting in my tongue, which did battle against hers for dominance. No, it was more of a back and forth, a push and a pull that was timeless and scorching. Her scent was all around me, and as I twined my fingers in that fiery blaze of her hair, I felt something deep inside of me come alive, something that I hadn't felt in a long time. With this woman, in her arms, I didn't feel like an orphan who had only 2 best friends in the world. I felt like I was finally home. I wrapped my arms around her and flipped her, sending her squealing onto her back, and decided it was my turn to make her feel the same way. Cherished, appreciated, cared for, loved.
Chapter 23. Lois. In the days leading up to Christmas, more presents appeared under the tree in the parlor, and Rose began baking up a storm of cookies, squares, and cakes. At first, I didn't know who she was trying to feed, considering we were a total group of 5, not 50, but then I was schooled that Rose made up little gift bags of goodies and gave them to her friends who visited her over the holidays. I'd been living with Rose for over a month when this whirlwind of baking began, and I wasn't aware that she had gotten many visitors. But then I wasn't around during the weekdays. And it was also true that now and then some kind of casserole would show up in the fridge, so I guess Rose did have a girl squad after all. I'd ordered some League of Magecraft merchandise for Norman and put it under the tree, but I wasn't sure it was personal enough, considering we were now officially a thing. I ran this by Rose, who laughed and said there were many years when she got her husband socks for Christmas because that's what he wanted and needed. She told me not to stress the presents, that it was the being together that made the holiday. The only thing that nagged at my heart was Elsa's absence. Our twice-weekly Skypes were fine, but they weren't the same as having her here. Technically, I could keep her year-round if I wanted, but it felt wrong to me to separate Elsa from a father who wanted to be involved in her life. But it was moments like this, like filling up a stocking for her to open in the new year, that made me miss her so much. I longed to tickle her, or chase her around, pretending to be a velociraptor, or run my fingers through her bouncy curls. I pictured Norman doing those things with her, and something inside me felt warm and vigorously alive. Like maybe, one day, we could be our own little family of 3 instead of us living off the generosity of Rose. I had to berate myself for getting too far ahead of things in my mind. I didn't even know if Norman wanted kids of his own, or if he would be able to think of Elsa as his daughter and not merely another kid. Because Philippe had been all in, didn't mean that Norman would be. Every day after that disastrous Monday, Norman had shown up at the library in the morning for me, latte in hand. Though there was technically a no food or drink policy in the building, I would decide to take my break at those times, and we would sit together outside if it weren't too cold for Norman, or in my car if it were, and talk. Or rather, he would talk while I drank. I learned more about how lonely he had been in Florida, despite having Jonathan and the Owen family nearby, how he sometimes hated his own father for being a war hero because it placed such expectation on Norman's shoulders. And I learned that I was the first woman he had ever been with who hadn't made him feel inadequate in bed because of his disability. That was part of the real reason he had given up on dating. Finding someone who could love him as he was and not be disappointed in the end felt like finding the ultra-rare ultimate weapon in magecraft. Christmas Eve brought with it a cold front that also meant a bit of real snow, not a flurry that amounts to nothing. When Norman arrived at Rose's that morning, he pulled me out onto the porch and kissed me long and hard, his body molding perfectly to mine. I broke away from him and hustled him around the veranda to the side of the house, not wanting to give the neighbors across the street a free show. He had this almost feral look in his eyes as he pushed me up against the side of the house and pressed our mouths together in that delicious dance that we had basically perfected by this point. The next thing I knew, Norman was growling as he took off his right mitten with his teeth and then resumed kissing me while also sticking his hand up my ugly Christmas sweater. I sighed into his mouth and let him explore me as he would, until I heard a creak on the old wood and then a feminine cough. Max. Oh, yeah, Max and Jonathan were right behind me. He laughed, extracting his hand and putting my sweater back to rights. Meanwhile, Max and Jonathan both stood there, giving us twin stares of amusement while they were in the middle of carting presents and food into the house. I let out a satisfied noise as I passed them down to Norman's truck. The neon was gone, and there was the old rust bucket, looking shiny and new. The passenger side door was open, and I could see a few more presents in there, so I grabbed the largest box and hoofed it to the house, lest I drop it. Whoa, Lois, you got that? Norman called, and though the box covered up my vision, I knew the path to the parlor by heart. I deposited it in the corner under the tree, and then caught a look at the card attached to the top, almost concealed by an enormous bow. To Lois. No take backsies. Love, N. XOXO. Seeing the X's and O's on the card made me feel all Twitter-pated, and I had to remind myself to stop daydreaming while my friends were lugging in groceries and other gifts. I moved to the kitchen and found Norman standing in the doorway to it, leaning up against the door jamb. I wrapped my arms around his torso from behind, and he reached up and held on to my hands where they were linked around his midsection. Rose? Max? Do you need any help in there? I called, hoping to feel of some use and not like an interloper.
No, dear. Why don't you entertain the boys in the parlor? My Maxie and I can handle all this.
I started to protest, but then stopped myself. This was Rose's home, and these were Max's and her traditions. She also probably wanted the alone time with her daughter, like how I cherished my alone time with Elsa. Okay, troops, let's move. We got a huge stack of board games to pick from, and I know how much you enjoy tabletop gaming, I declared. Or we could take turns logging on to Magecraft and get our gifts from the Yuletide King, Norman suggested, his eyes dancing with excitement. Behind him, Jonathan nodded. Okay, Yuletide King, here we come, I declared. Jonathan grabbed a laptop bag from the foyer, and we settled into the parlor for some free in-game collectibles from their Santa Claus pastiche. First, I got this enormous staff of wild healing, a rare gift that would help make my player dominate even more. Jonathan tried his luck next and got a huge freaking sword that glowed in shifting patterns, making it look like the weapon was on fire. Next up was Norman, and as he logged on to Death Drop, he rubbed his hands together in glee. A short flight to the capital city, and he was ready to crawl on the Yuletide King's lap. And his gift? A slingshot. A toy slingshot, which would vanish after being used a few times. Oh, and he got a few snowballs to lob, too. Jonathan and I cracked up when Norman said that this was total bullshit, and I whispered in his ear, "It's because you've been a naughty man this year." I then bit his earlobe, and I felt a shudder run through him. We were in our own world temporarily, leaning in for a kiss when Max interrupted, saying, "On my mother's couch in the middle of the afternoon? Really, guys? And hey, is that the Yuletide King? I've got to get in there and see what I got." Max came along and inserted herself between Norman and me on the couch, a slightly evil grin on her face. She took her turn logging in and visiting the king, making loud whoop-whoop noises as she unsheathed a badass battle axe that looked like it could destroy anything she cut with it. "This is great, guys! We got new weapons for the arena, almost all rare items, too. Except you, Norman. Sorry." "Yeah, I can sense your utter heartbreak for me," he replied sarcastically. After some time, during which the four of us were talking at once, Max got up and said, "Okay, huddle up for room assignments." We all came to a hush, and she said, "We have 2 bedrooms upstairs, both with queen beds, so naturally I'll be with Lois, and Norman and Jonathan, you can take Elsa's room. That's what we discussed, right, Mom?" I hadn't even noticed Rose enter the room. She looked mischievous as she smiled benevolently at the group. "Yep, we did, and no hangdog faces around here. You can go without getting any for 1 night." "Mama!" Max exclaimed, her accent coming out a bit more in her voice when she was scandalized. "Oh, shush, Maxie. I've been in love a time or 2. I know how it goes. Now, everyone grab your bags and settle in upstairs. I'll be in the kitchen keeping an eye on the mulled wine." Mulled wine? That wasn't something I thought was on the agenda. I thought everyone was having the homemade eggnog Rose already prepared. As much as I had dreaded drinking that concoction because I couldn't stand the stuff, I was grateful that there would be something festive for me to drink. I grew up with mulled wine on Christmas Eve. I wonder if I had ever told Rose that. I let it go, and we trooped upstairs one at a time because of the narrowness of the staircase. Max pulled Jonathan into Elsa's room, which I had made up with fresh sheets, so I figured they wanted alone time. I grabbed Norman's hand and lent him some support for the last of the steps, and then we went into my room. "Your room is nice, Lois. I love old houses like this, the history, the bones of them." "The extremely small windows?" I laughed, pointing at my window. Okay, so maybe it wasn't extremely small, but it was definitely smaller than it looked from the outside. "You know, this used to be Rose's room when she was growing up. The kicker? There was once a tall oak outside the house on this side, and Rose used to squeeze through that window and climb down to sneak out and hit up the bars or honky-tonks or whatever they're called down here. When her father found out, he was furious, and the oak was cut down." "Wow, go Rose. What a rebel," Norman said, grinning. "I bet she could cut a rug even now. It's a shame we always have to leave her behind when we go out as a group." "Well, there is a piano in that parlor. How about we get down there and you show off some of your skills? Bring the singing and dancing here?" Norman seemed to think on that for a moment, then nodded. "Let's do it. But first, I'm going to drop my bag off in the right bedroom. I hope they aren't shagging in there." "Ugh, in my daughter's bed? They'd better not be." After some rousing carols in the parlor and a few rounds of exploding kittens, Rose left the room and signaled for Max to follow her. They returned with identical gleams in their eyes, and I knew something was up. "Now, we're going to have dinner in the dining room, since it's a holiday. I know you'd prefer to eat in here with your plates on your laps, but do me this one solid?" Rose asked, and I was impressed by her incorporation of slang. We all followed her down the hallway and into the dining room, which looked like something from a Christmas movie. I never came in here, so I hadn't known what Rose had been up to while I was at work. The table was set with candles burning. Poinsettias were placed around the room, and evergreen boughs decorated the highboy. We all looked around in wonder, and that's when I saw the dishes of food on the table. My lower lip and chin started to quiver, because I knew now why Rose had asked all those probing questions about my upbringing last week.
Now, for tonight's treats, we owe a debt to Lois's Mormor, who has passed, may she rest in peace.
Rose began, her eyes on me.
Lois let me know that her Mormor tried to keep Swedish traditions alive while Lois was growing up, especially around Christmas. We've got gingerbread cookies and a light cheese to spread on them. There's mulled wine, which is also known as glögg, a Christmas ham with a sliced potato side dish, and another made from cabbage. Meatballs, in the Swedish style, of course, and there are also little pork sausages, which I have not been snacking on at all. Don't look at me like that, Maxie. And in true Swedish fashion, we are having as many toasts during dinner as we like.
We practically fell on the food like a pack of starving wolves once we were all seated, and Rose had said a short grace. I tried not to cry as the flavors from home danced on my tongue, reminding me of my last Christmas in Nebraska, before Elsa and when Mormor was still alive, before life got too complicated and everything fell apart.
"A toast,"
Norman shouted, lifting a glass of Coke while the rest of us had wine.
"To Lois's Mormor, and to Rose and Max for making her dishes come to life for us this Christmas Eve."
To Mormor, Rose, and Max, we all said, clinking our glasses.
"I would like to make a toast,"
Jonathan said.
"To all of you for making Norman and me feel so welcome and appreciated. It means the world to us."
"Hear, hear," Norman said, and we all laughed and clinked glasses again. As the meal went on and the ham and side dishes dwindled, we all made a toast, and I taught them a bawdy drinking song that I'd heard my grandpa sing when I was young. Then, with a lump in my throat, I made the last toast of the evening. To friends who are like family, and to those who can't be here with us tonight. Everyone was a bit more somber at that, and Norman leaned over in his chair and pressed a kiss to my cheek.
"I love you,"
he said in a voice just for me. "I know."
"You're sexy when you quote Star Wars."